owner of the US Mega Farmest video is Puremont para Intratnamiento Wino Infringe de Recos de Originales. Los de Recos de la Novela y la Imagen son del otro original, no reclamamos propiedad. No te gusta esperar y quieres escuchar este fanfic completo ahora? Suscríbete a nuestro Patreon, donde encontrarás los mejores fanfics. Chapter 751 Larry Richards. Since they have been discovered, there is no point for those people to continue eating. After eating a few mouthfuls and filling their stomachs, Kinzu and his friends followed Frank and walked to the office area on the side. Mr. Clean, don't worry, there is absolutely no problem with the operation of Lis Ballet. If the boss's funds are not in trouble, he will never sell it. As they walked, Frank was still praising the various advantages of Lis Ballet, as if he was afraid that Kinzu would not buy it. But Kinzu and Chenmu didn't listen to this. What funding problem? It's all bullshit. If it weren't for the fact that the restaurant business was getting worse day by day, how could Larry Richards, who was not short of money, think of selling it? Kinzu believed that as the chef at the restaurant, Frank must know this. However, this guy still said this, so we have to say that this fat-headed and big-eared foreigner is not a good thing. Thinking of this, Kinzu couldn't help but mutter in his heart, who kept saying that foreigners are honest and won't play any tricks. Don't be fooled by his big and strong appearance, but he is very thoughtful. While thinking, Kinzu and his friends walked into Frank's small office. Mr. Clean, please sit down for a while. Mr. Larry will be here soon. Pulling over a few chairs, Frank warmly invited them to sit down. After Kinzu sat down, he looked around. Only then did he realize that this so-called small office was actually just a simple lounge. And the area was not very large. With so many people rushing in, it really seemed a bit crowded. Seeing this, Dale and Erica took the initiative to leave, which made the room look a bit more spacious. At this time, Frank seemed to have found that his room was a bit narrow, and explained with a smile. The space here is relatively small, please forgive me, Mr. Clean. Kinzu smiled and nodded, indicating that it was nothing. The location here is so good, every inch of land is worth a lot of money, it's good to have an office. Chenmu saw that the atmosphere was a bit awkward, and quickly spoke to break the silence. Frank also smiled and agreed, yes, he only comes here to rest when he is tired. Under normal circumstances, he will not come here. Kinzu was a little surprised by this, but he was relieved after thinking about it. After all, Frank's position in Lis Ballet is different from Chenmu's position in Meritage Restaurant. When Chenmu was the chef at Meritage Restaurant, Roger Ferguson completely delegated power to him. Because the guy was just an investor on Wall Street. The reason why he invested in Meritage Restaurant was that he was optimistic about the future development trend of the restaurant. If he made this investment, Roger Ferguson could pat his chest and go out to show off proudly, because this was a very successful investment. But when it comes to the operation of the restaurant, Roger Ferguson is a little blind, because he knows nothing about these things. Therefore, Ferguson is only responsible for investment, and the operation rights of the restaurant are completely delegated to the chef. In comparison, Larry Richards is completely different. Larry is a pure industrialist. He has many industries near New York and Boston, and they are all industrial. People who do industry are different from those who do finance on Wall Street. They prefer to control their own industries personally. Maybe it will be more tiring, but the feeling of giving orders is still very good. Well, if he is happy, others will be unhappy. Frank is the most unhappy one. As a chef and the soul of Lis Ballet, his status in Lis Ballet and the great value he has played are not at the same level. If it weren't for the good salary Larry gave, he would have even thought about quitting. Thinking of this, Kinzu was so obsessed with why this guy must invest in the restaurant. Not for anything else, just to get the position he wanted in the future restaurant. It's just a pity that except for a limited number of restaurants, Kinzu did not plan to release shares anymore, otherwise why not give him some? While chatting, Kinzu was thinking about things, and he didn't even notice the passage of time. It was not until there was a knock on the door that they came to their senses. Boss, Mr. Larry is here. Dale's voice was still cold and faint, and it came into Kinzu's ears from outside. Hearing that the main person of the day had arrived, everyone in the room stood up, straightened their clothes, and went out to greet him. When they opened the door, they saw a white old man with grey hair standing not far from the door. Kinzu really couldn't tell the age of this old man. Well, maybe he couldn't tell the age of all white people. But there was one thing Kinzu could confirm, that is, this guy was fat. Well, just look at the big belly. This industrial tycoon named Larry has the image of a classic American old man. Mr. Clean, nice to meet you, I'm Larry. Seeing Kinzu coming out, Larry's face was immediately full of smiles, and he stretched out his hands to greet Kinzu. Kinzu didn't dare to be arrogant, because the other party's worth was not necessarily lower than his own. So, he quickly extended his hands and shook hands with the other party, and complimented with a smile. Mr. Larry, I have heard of your name for a long time. I have wanted to visit you for a long time, but unfortunately I have never been able to find that time. Larry accepted Kinzu's compliments in full. As the saying goes, a sedan chair is carried by a person, so he also complimented Kinzu a few words in return. So the old and the young, at the door of Frank's lounge, shook each other's hands and kept shaking them, and said polite words that made him feel goosebumps. After a few minutes of greetings, until the other party felt a little unbearable, he gradually stopped. Clean, let's go to my office to talk. After finishing the mutual flattery, Larry led the way with a smile on his face and walked to his office. Seeing this, Kinzu did not hesitate, put his arm around the slender waist of the beautiful Zhu, and followed him leisurely. You two hypocritical guys. The beautiful Zhu seemed to be stimulated by the two old men, who were almost 100 years old in total, and now she still felt some goosebumps that have not subsided. Kinzu could only roll his eyes helplessly. What could he do? Who would have thought that this bald little foreign old man could talk more than him? There was nothing he could do. Since he was willing to talk, he could only accompany him to the end. You can't just turn against him when he says a few words to you, right? Why not? Kinzu muttered silently. If there really was a day, he really wanted to be the kind of person who didn't need to look at other people's faces. Chapter 752 Starting a Company. Buzz buzz buzz. With a roar, a steel giant took off and flew slowly into the distance. Chenmu and Frank stood on the roof, watching the steel giant flying farther and farther, with different feelings in their hearts. But one thing is certain, that is, they are very happy. Chenmu was happy because he finally had a soldier under his command, and the general manager of his group company was finally no longer a mere title with only one store. And Frank was happy because Kinzu had handed over the management of L'Espalier to him before leaving. That's right, just over half an hour ago, Kinzu and Larry had officially signed that transfer contract. The contract was drafted by David according to Kinzu's wishes, and it was checked over and over by the beautiful Zhu along the way, so he signed it very happily. This time, he paid a total of $53.2 million and got everything including the L'Espalier brand. Even the business center they occupied, which was more than 300 square meters, also belonged to Kinzu. When he signed his name, Kinzu was so excited. These are all real estate. This big building will be his in the future. Thinking back, Frank looked at Chen Mu beside him and asked, Mr. Chen, what do you think we should do now? Chen Mu waved his hand and said with a smile, Frank, just call me Chen. Seeing that the helicopter had gone far away, Chen Mu turned around and walked downstairs. He thought for a long time in the office with a slightly luxurious decoration, and then said, Well, Frank, you go back and appease the employees first, then sort out the restaurant and see what else is needed. I will go out to purchase it together. Frank nodded, smiled and agreed, and got up and walked outside. He didn't want to stay here any longer. After all, this belongs to Chen Mu's meritage restaurant, not him. Of course, as long as he returned to L'Espalier, he would be relieved. Well, although there are two guys above him, Chen Mu and Kinzu. However, this is also good. Because of the two guys above, one basically doesn't care about things, and the other is only responsible for the general direction. Therefore, he, the store manager, is still the one who does the specific work. That's right, he is no longer just a chef, but the store manager and chief chef at L'Espalier. However, Kinzu also promised that as long as the restaurant is on the right track, he, the chef, can relax and no longer have to be as busy as he is now. The things here are handed over to Chen Mu, so Kinzu walked very casually. Before the beautiful Zhu could react, he had already embraced her in his arms and was eager to move on to the next step. However, the beautiful Zhu was thin-skinned after all, and kept struggling in Kinzu's arms. Fortunately, this so-called struggle became very honest after Kinzu slapped her a few times. The helicopter moved forward all the way, and just when Kinzu's big hand was about to occupy the high ground, Dale's voice came over. Boss, we're about to land, you must fasten your seatbelts. Kinzu sat up straight and realized that they were already above the ranch. Okay, stop making trouble, we're about to arrive. Kinzu said, holding the beauty's slender waist. After hearing this, the beautiful Zhu rolled her eyes helplessly. Please, who is making trouble? Don't you know what's going on? Perhaps because she knew that she was about to arrive home, the beautiful Zhu became much more timid. She quickly broke free from Qin Zhu's arms and said with a smile, Qin, I find that someone is getting thicker and thicker. What should I do? Thick. Qin Zhu pretended to be puzzled and wiped his face with his hand, and said with a smile, Look, you are almost getting thinner, how can you get fat? While they were playing and making trouble, the helicopter had slowly landed in the ranch, which immediately caused another commotion. Not far away, the Angus cattle that were leisurely grazing were startled by the noise made by the helicopter. Woof woof woof. Qin Zhu was startled by a few barkings before he even had time to get off the plane. You two little guys, why are you so excited? After getting off the helicopter, Qin Zhu picked up the two little guys and let their little tails wag constantly, but he didn't let go. Forward. A crisp roar also sounded, as if reminding someone that there was another one here. Qin Zhu saw this and didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so after putting his things away, he hurried over to help. When people began to circle around it, Betty wagged her tail in satisfaction and ran to the side with her little friend to run wild. Walking into the villa and throwing his body on a soft and somewhat elastic sofa, Qin Zhu didn't want to do anything for the first time, just wanted to stay like this quietly for a while. The acquisition of L'Espalier went smoothly, and his current company already had 2 restaurants. By the way, it seems that my company hasn't been registered yet. Qin Zhu scratched his head. He was a little confused about the situation now. In order to avoid taxes, it seemed that David helped him to register a company in the Cayman Islands. But now he wants to start a company, what should he do? Qin Zhu took out his mobile phone and called David without hesitation. Hi, Qin, long time no see. David asked with a sense of intimacy on the other end of the phone. Yes, David, long time no see, you haven't been to the ranch for a long time, right? Qin Zhu nodded and asked back with a smile. After the two of them exchanged pleasantries for a while, Qin Zhu asked, David, if I want to set up a chain restaurant group, what else do I need? Restaurant group. David's voice was full of surprise. Yes, I acquired another restaurant and am preparing to make them a chain, making them bigger and stronger. Hearing this, David couldn't help but smile and said, the one just now. Do you think it's okay? Why not? Qin Zhu asked back. David smiled and was about to say something, but suddenly realized that what they were discussing now was the establishment of a company, not something else. Qin, I think your new company should be registered in the Cayman Islands. To avoid taxes? Qin Zhu asked subconsciously. David didn't care whether Qin Zhu could see it or not, he nodded fiercely and said with a smile. Of course, otherwise why would so many companies be registered in the Cayman Islands? It costs much more than registering a company in China. Qin Zhu didn't care where to register. The only thing he needed now was someone who could take care of this matter. So, he smiled and said, David, look, how about leaving this matter to you? Rolling his eyes helplessly, David hung up the phone speechlessly. If he had known that he had to go by himself, he might as well have kept quiet. Chapter 753 Brand Segmentation. Although the registration of the company was handed over to David, Qin Zhu was not at ease. With the addition of a new store, the distribution of food became the biggest problem he faced. It was at this time that Qin Zhu finally figured out where his advantage was. Stupid, I'm really too stupid. Sitting on the sofa in the living room, Qin Zhu was so annoyed that he wanted to slap himself twice. What's wrong? Hearing the noise, Zhu Mengyo, who was sitting on the other side and busy calculating the financial situation of the new store, looked up curiously. Qin Zhu had nothing to hide from the people around him, so he said directly, Mengyo, I just figured out what I rely on most to open a store. Oh? Zhu Mengyo immediately became interested, sat up straight, stretched her waist, and asked with a smile. Tell me, what is the reason that makes you confident to open a restaurant chain? Ingredients. Qin Zhu said firmly. What was my purpose in opening a restaurant in the beginning? It was to make the ingredients of our ranch salad a good price. Ingredients. Zhu Mengyo raised her chin thoughtfully. It seems that the meals recently have been very delicious. At first, she thought that Eva's cooking skills were good, but now she understood what Qin Zhu said. For those top-notch ingredients, the chef does not need to be very skilled, but only needs to keep the original flavor of the ingredients. You mean, we don't actually need to acquire L'Espalier? Zhu Mengyo was still very smart. After a little thought, she understood Qin Zhu's idea. Qin Zhu nodded and explained with a smile. We just need to open the new store, and then with the advantage of ingredients and the word of mouth of customers, we can easily establish the brand. He just figured it out. Why did he acquire those brand stores? It was just to promote his own brand. But in this way, there is a big problem that he has to face. That is, these Michelin 3-star restaurants rely heavily on chefs and are not suitable for chain restaurant management. Just like Frank, if he doesn't want to continue working at L'Espalier, his loss will definitely be huge. Moreover, after the chain restaurant is established, it is also difficult to manage. Take the distribution of ingredients for example, these brand restaurants will definitely not be able to achieve unified distribution with chain restaurants. Just when Qin Zhu was a little annoyed, Zhu Mengyo beside him laughed. Qin, I think you are now in a misunderstanding. Huh? Misunderstanding? Qin Zhu was a little stunned. What misunderstanding? Putting down the things in her hand, Zhu Mengyo stood up and walked to Qin Zhu, smiling and asked. You said yourself that many of those luxury brands are actually owned by the same company. Why is that? After being asked by Zhu Mengyo, Qin Zhu also began to think seriously. Yes, since it is so difficult to establish a luxury brand, why do those companies have to establish so many brands? Why? If you don't understand, just ask. Since Zhu Mengyo said so, Qin Zhu believed that she would give him a reasonable explanation. Zhu Mengyo did not disappoint Qin Zhu. After smiling, she explained, this is because they want to target different groups of people and different levels, and divide the products into high, medium and low end. As she spoke, she seemed to be afraid that Qin Zhu still didn't understand, so she gave an example. Look, just like L'Oreal, there are not only first-line brands, such as Lancome and HR. There are also second-line brands, such as Bitherm and Gihels, mainly organic. There are even third-line or lower-line brands, such as L'Oreal Paris, Beauty Jet, Garnier, Usai, Little Nurse, The Body Shop, etc. Qin Zhu listened and kept thinking in his mind. Gradually, the ideas in his mind became clearer. When Zhu Mengyo stopped, picked up the cup and started to drink water, Qin Zhu said, Mengyo, do you mean that we should also classify the grades of restaurants? Of course. Putting down the cup in her hand, Zhu Mengyo said with a smile. For example, Meritage Restaurant and L'Espalier, as well as the Michelin restaurants to be acquired in the future, are the highest-end batch of our restaurant group. And our newly established, chain restaurants of the second echelon of our restaurant group. After all, the ingredients of our ranch are not all high-end, right? Qin Zhu was excited when he heard it, and nodded in response. That's true. An Angus cow, with the most perfect meat yield, can only produce more than 20% of top-grade beef at most. Isn't that enough? After listening to Qin Zhu's words, Zhu Mengyo's smile became more and more intense, and she said with a smile, in that case, it's just right to supply all the high-end beef to the top restaurants, and the inferior ones to the chain restaurants. For the worst, maybe we can open a community restaurant. Looking at the beautiful lady Zhu who was talking freely, Qin Zhu realized that her ability was so outstanding. Mengyo, you are so great. When facing a woman who is smarter than himself, there are usually only two things a man needs to do. Conquer and be conquered. And Qin Zhu is obviously the kind of man who likes to conquer. So, after the beautiful lady Zhu showed her talent, she was directly carried into the bedroom by the landlord Qin who had untied her knot. On this afternoon with the north wind, in the spacious but warm bedroom, a man and a woman rolled together passionately. A room full of spring after the rain, Qin Zhu did not get up in a hurry, but lay on the soft big bed, leaning on the head of the bed, holding the beauty in his arms, thinking about things quietly. Now he has a very clear mind, and no longer has the confusion and helplessness about the future in the past few days. To be honest, the landlord Qin, who has not received any elite education since childhood, is still very contradictory about his current life. On the one hand, he is afraid that it is just Zhuangzhao's dream of a butterfly, and he wants to enjoy life to the fullest. He has a detached attitude towards everything in life. Neither participate nor refuse. On the other hand, he wanted to prove himself. Before this, he always thought that he just lacked a starting point of style. As long as he stood on the same starting line as others, he would not lose to anyone. But when he really had everything, he began to worry about gains and losses, and no longer had the enterprising spirit. However, all this changed from the day he bought the plane. He still remembers Peter's eyes. Although he didn't say anything, the meaning of that look was very clear. Can you afford it? Qin Zhu really wanted to slap him at the time to let him see that I can not only afford it, but even if I beat you up, I can afford to pay for it. Chapter 754 Tycoon Catering Group. David was very efficient. The day before Kinzu packed up and prepared to leave for China, the business registration of Tycoon Catering was completed. Not only that, but even Tycoon Manor was transferred to the name of Tycoon Catering Group by David. This means that this company, which has no office until now has more than $100 million in assets. TSK, Mingyo, I'm the boss of the company now, right? Kinzu looked at the beautiful Zhu beside him with a sigh, looking at the documents in his hand. Zhu Mingyo nodded gently and looked at him with a smile, revealing a lot of emotion in her eyes. Once upon a time, this man was just a small salesman, and was made difficult by the company's leaders every day. But who would have thought that only a few months later, this man not only had fixed assets of more than $1 billion, but also had hundreds of millions in cash. David, thank you for this time. Stay for lunch at noon. After showing off, Kinzu raised his head and looked at David opposite with gratitude. He believed that David must have made a lot of efforts and paid a lot of favors to get the company registration information so quickly. David smiled and shook his head, stood up, and said with a smile, I won't bother you anymore. I'm in a hurry this time. New York is waiting for me. Kinzu saw this and had to stand up as well. He shrugged and advised with a smile, David, you should take a vacation. If you keep busy every day, your body will definitely not be able to bear it. David spread his hands helplessly, and walked out while sighing. I also want to take a long vacation, but there are too many lawsuits recently, and I can't avoid them. Kinzu smiled and followed him out without saying anything. After seeing David off, Kinzu walked back to the villa and saw Zhu Mingyo still studying the information of the new company. He walked over and sat down beside her. Mingyo, how is the research going? Awakened by the voice, Zhu Mingyo turned around and said with a smile, Fortunately, I have consulted a lot of experts on taxation recently. I believe that there will be no problem in dealing with such a small company. Small company? Kinzu pretended to be shocked when he heard this, and said with a sad face, Mingyo, the company I created with great effort, how come it becomes a small company in your mouth? The beautiful Zhu covered her mouth and chuckled, teasing. The company doesn't even have one employee now. How can it not be considered a small company? Kinzu looked at the girl speechlessly. He had no way to refute this question, so he could only say depressedly, just wait, sooner or later, my company will also become one of the Fortune 500. Zhu Mingyo nodded in agreement, but the smile on her face became even more intense. Stroking his forehead silently, Kinzu decided not to argue with this girl about these useless things, and asked instead, by the way, Mingyo, how were you preparing your luggage for returning home? Speaking of this, the smile on Zhu Mingyo's face froze, and she didn't know how to answer for a moment. Fortunately, she was only stunned for a moment, and after coming to her senses, she said a little shyly, I'm ready. Kinzu was happy to see this, and lifted her round little chin with one finger. Dear, you want to meet your parents-in-law so much? No way, I won't tell you. Facing Kinzu's somewhat naughty smile, Zhu Mingyo retreated directly, packed up the things on the table, and hurried upstairs. Kinzu followed behind, while continuing to stimulate this shy little girl. However, before they had walked for long, they were interrupted by a ringing cell phone. Taking out the ringing cell phone, Kinzu stopped helplessly and had to watch the beauty disappear at the stairs. What's wrong? Is there anything wrong, Brother Chen? Chen Mu on the other end of the phone reluctantly took back his feet from the coffee table and asked with a headache, Boss, I heard that you will be back to China tomorrow, and you will be gone for more than 10 days. What about our restaurant? The restaurant will be open as usual. What's wrong? Kinzu asked curiously. But isn't the restaurant still under renovation? Do you still need to recruit chefs? And how to distribute the ingredients for the new store? You need to make decisions on all these. Stop. Kinzu felt a headache and interrupted. Brother Chen, are you mistaken? Aren't these things under your management? Chen Mu rolled his eyes on the other end of the phone and said helplessly, Boss, I am fine with the store here, but what about Lispalia? What's wrong with Lispalia? Aren't you the general manager of the catering company? Our Tycoon Catering Group was just successfully registered today. Kinzu smiled and comforted. Chen Mu hesitated for a moment, but couldn't help but suggest, Boss, if you are sure to let me be the general manager of the catering company, then you'd better find someone else to be the manager of Meritage Restaurant. Kinzu frowned and asked in confusion, Is Lispalia dissatisfied? Chen Mu smiled bitterly and explained. Not yet, but if I continue like this, there'll definitely be complaints. Qin Zhu was silent. He had never thought about this problem at first. After all, he was just a small clerk before, and he had never experienced these twists and turns. In fact, think about it, it is also true that the manager of one of the two stores of the same scale and level is one level higher than the manager of the other store, which must be a bit inappropriate. The first is the distribution of materials. Unless Chen Mu is completely fair and just, Lis Ballier will not have any complaints. Let's not talk about whether it can be completely fair and just for now. Even if it is really fair and just, Lis Ballier has no objection, but what about Meritage Restaurant? No one will really like a leader who cannot seek benefits for his employees. Especially in a capitalist country. Since you can't bring benefits to your subordinates, how can you expect others to believe in you? Brother Chen. Do you have any suggestions? After hesitating for a while, Qin Zhu chose to ask the person involved directly. Boss, I think you should set up another store manager to manage the specific affairs of the restaurant here. Chen Mu suggested without hesitation. But after you leave, will it be okay over there? Qin Zhu was a little worried about Chen Mu's suggestion. After all, you are still the chef over there. If you don't go, will it be affected by the restaurant? Hearing that Qin Zhu was willing to accept it again, Chen Mu couldn't help laughing and explained hurriedly. Boss, the impact won't be too big. I'm mainly doing management work in the restaurant now, and I rarely do it myself. Chapter 755 Preparations before returning home. Honey, we don't need to bring so many things, right? Qin Zhu looked at the large and small bags in front of him, and Zhu Mengyo who was still packing, and a few black lines appeared on his head. It's just going home, you bring so many things back, how can we carry them? Are they a lot? Zhu Mengyo, who was staring at the two women's handbags in her hand, looked back in confusion after hearing Qin Zhu's words. Isn't this a lot? Qin Zhu glanced at the several suitcases in front of him and their backpacks of different sizes beside him in silence, and said helplessly, there are only two of us, so many things can't be taken back. Then what should we do? The smart beauty Zhu looked at the several large boxes in front of her at this time, but she felt at a loss. This is a gift for uncle, this is for aunt, this is for sister, this is for brother-in-law, this is for younger sister, this is for Tongton, and this is for Lily. One box after another was opened, and Zhu Mengyo's voice became smaller and smaller. Finally, she raised her head helplessly and looked at Qin Zhu. They both looked at each other in bewilderment. How about buying this when we get back? Now, Qin Zhu couldn't say that she brought too many things, after all, they were all prepared for his family. No, Zhu Mengyo only considered Qin Zhu's proposal for a moment, and then decisively rejected it. I picked these out after a long time. They are very American and may not be available in China. Then how about this? Qin Zhu rubbed his hands and said with some hesitation, let's send them back by express delivery. Let's send these things back directly by express delivery. This. Zhu Mengyo hesitated for a moment and decisively agreed. Anyway, it's still early before the new year, and it should be in time to send them by express delivery. Since he had decided to send them by express delivery, Qin Zhu didn't bother to talk too much, and let the beautiful Zhu pack up there, and he went out to find Dale and asked her to come over to help him. Boss, do you really not need me to go with you? Dale asked anxiously as she followed Qin Zhu to the villa. You know, she followed Qin Zhu the last few times he returned to China, but she didn't expect that Qin Zhu would not take her with him now. So, she was really worried now. Did she do something wrong to make Qin Zhu angry? Or did Qin Zhu start to dislike her? Qin Zhu, who was walking in front of her, seemed to know what she was thinking. He turned around and stopped while going upstairs. Caught off guard, Dale, who was already a little confused, threw herself into Qin Zhu's arms. Ah, what are you doing? Woo! Dale only had time to let out a weak cry, and her body suddenly froze in place, her eyes wide open, as if she was staring at the daring guy in front of her in disbelief. His fiancée, Zhu Mengyo, was in this building. Even less than 10 meters away from them, she was still packing things with great interest. After a while, Qin Zhu finally let Dale, who was a little out of breath, go. Ha, I can't believe that Dale, who was a Special Forces soldier, would still be out of breath. After letting Dale go, Qin Zhu gave her another kiss on the face with a sly smile, then trotted upstairs. Honey, how is it? Are you almost done packing? After entering the room, Qin Zhu looked at Zhu Mengyo who was still packing, and began to move the things out little by little. One more thing, since it's being sent back, I'll bring a little more. As she said this, the beautiful Zhu looked at Qin Zhu with a bit of depression. She muttered to herself, if there weren't so many people in your family, would I have to prepare so many gifts? Qin Zhu might have known the beautiful woman's resentment. He just smiled, picked up a box, and began to move downstairs quickly. Seeing this, Dale, who followed in, also hurried to help. Even if there are a lot of messy things, there are too many people. After a while, with the help of several people, those things that should be sent by express have been loaded onto the pickup truck. How is it? Do I still need to go? Standing at the door, looking at the things that piled up in half of the car, Zhu Mengyo stuck out her tongue and asked embarrassedly. Qin Zhu climbed onto the co-pilot with a smile and waved at the beautiful Zhu. Hurry up and prepare, don't make a mistake with the things we are going to take with us. Zhu Mengyo nodded her head and watched the pickup truck slowly go away. The excitement in her heart slowly calmed down. She will go back to her hometown with Qin Zhu tomorrow. It would be a lie to say that she is not nervous. But despite being nervous, Zhu Mengyo was still very happy. After all, meeting his parents means that her position in Qin Zhu's heart is still very stable. This is enough. In the afternoon, just after lunch, Qin Zhu called John and Will to the villa. Motioning for the two to sit on the sofa opposite, Qin Zhu bent over and made 2 cups of coffee himself, then sat back on the sofa with a smile. Old John, you should know that I'm going back tomorrow, and I'll leave the ranch business to you. Old John picked up the cup, blew it gently, then smiled and nodded. Boss, don't worry, I will definitely take good care of the ranch, and I guarantee that there will be no problems. I'm very relieved about this. Qin Zhu nodded slightly when he heard that. He was still very confident in old John's ability. However, thinking of the black and white cow in the cowshed, Qin Zhu smiled and reminded. In fact, the most important thing in the ranch is that little cow. You must help me take good care of it, and don't let anything happen to it. Speaking of the little cow, old John's expression was a little strange. Boss, it can't be called a calf now. Oh? Why? Qin Zhu looked over curiously. In response, old John just shook his head, indicating that he was not very clear. For some reason, the little cow is now different every day. It's less than 2 months old, and its size is now not much different from that of an adult bull. Seeing that old John couldn't explain it clearly, Qin Zhu had to suppress his curiosity and turn to look at Will on the side. Will, the fishery will be handed over to you these days. Is that okay? Seeing Qin Zhu's somewhat worried look, Will patted his chest and assured. Boss, don't worry, there is absolutely no problem with this. He nodded slightly. There were not many choices now. It was just a few days anyway, so he might as well make do with it for now. Just as he was about to end today's conversation, Qin Zhu suddenly remembered something. Looking at Will beside him, the smile on his face became even brighter. Chapter 756. Classmates surprise. Will, I remember those guys from Bell said that the plane will be delivered in the next few days. You can sign for it here. The plane has come in. Will looked up at Qin Zhu with some surprise. He really didn't expect Qin Zhu to be so efficient. Yes, it was agreed to be half a month, and it has been a week. Qin Zhu got up and went upstairs, handed the invoices and everything to Will, and said with a smile, remember to call Simon and Dale and let the professionals check it up. Will nodded in agreement and echoed with a smile. Yes, speaking of this, I think Simon was really lucky to have taken the pilot's license so early. Shrugging his shoulders, Qin Zhu didn't say anything, but continued to chat with the two, and didn't forget to explain some things that should be paid attention to later. Buzz buzz buzz. With a roar, a black and brown steel monster drew a straight line in the air and flew all the way to New York. On the plane, only Dale and Erica were in the front cockpit at the moment, and Qin Zhu and Zhu Mengyo were the only ones in the back, snuggling together and admiring the blue sky outside. It's better to be in Revere. The air and sky there are much better than Boston and New York. Zhu Mengyo looked out the window quietly, looking at the sky that had begun to become a little blurry, and her thoughts drifted for a while. A moment later, the helicopter landed slowly not too far from Kennedy International Airport. Boss, I'll take you here. You can't get close to the airport. After opening the car door, Dale looked at Qin Zhu with a complicated expression, not knowing what she was thinking. Even Qin Zhu, whose face was as thick as a city wall, couldn't stand Dale's staring gaze for a while. Ahem, Dale, you guys should go back first, I'll be here. After taking the luggage from Erica, Qin Zhu waved to the two girls, turned around and walked towards the airport with the beautiful Zhu. On the way, Zhu Mengyo asked curiously, Clean, shall we fly directly to Jiangnan? Oh. Let's fly directly to Jiangnan. Qin Zhu hesitated for a moment, then decided, and explained. When we get to Jiangnan, we can stay there for 2 or 3 days, and you can also go to meet friends. Isn't that great? Zhu Wenguo nodded and smiled. I have no objection, I'll do whatever you say. As soon as these words came out, the status of the beautiful Zhu in Qin Zhu's heart instantly improved a lot. What a good woman, what an obedient woman. The flight is always boring and long. People who have experienced long-distance travel know that it is very uncomfortable to sit in one place for a long time without moving. Fortunately, just when Qin Zhu felt that he was about to give up, the journey finally ended. Following the crowd out of the airport, letting the warm sun shine on the body, people can't help but want to have a good sleep. Hi, Qin Zhu, this way. With a somewhat excited male voice, Qin Zhu looked back and saw Wang Ming coming up with a big belly. After giving the fat man a warm hug, Qin Zhu smiled and teased, Hey, second brother, I haven't seen you for a few days, and you've grown in size again. Wang Ming shook off his fat and boasted proudly, See, this is such a perfect body shape, you guys don't know how to appreciate it. Seeing Wang Ming's funny look, Zhu Wenguo beside him couldn't help but chuckle, stretched out her hand to shake his, and said hello while holding back a smile. Wang Ming and Zhu Wenguo also knew each other. Seeing the two of them coming back together, they didn't say anything. They just winked at Qin Zhu and took the two of them to the city. Because he brought a female companion, Qin Zhu didn't stay at Wang Ming's house, but booked a suite in a 5-star hotel in the city. There was no way. If he was alone, it wouldn't matter, but it would definitely be inconvenient to go to someone else's house with a female companion. Let's not talk about other things first, just take the simplest point. When staying overnight at someone else's house, men and women cannot sleep in the same room. Yes, even if you go to the woman's house, you can sleep alone, but do you want to sleep with your wife? No way. Shaking his head, Qin Zhu couldn't help but smile bigly. How could he always lead his thoughts astray? By the way, Lao-san, how many days are you going to stay this time? Wang Ming's words made Qin Zhu come back to his senses, and he smiled and said, I estimate that I can stay for about half a month. What's the matter? Is there something? Wang Ming was not polite. He turned the steering wheel and said with a smile, The eldest and the fourth may also come over in the next 2 days. Then we brothers will have a good reunion. No problem, I'll call them later and discuss when to get together. As old classmates and old friends, Wang Ming didn't say much, but took them to the entrance of the hotel and stopped. Lao-san, you go and handle the procedures first. I'll pick you up here in the evening and go to my house for dinner together. Having said that, without waiting for Qin Zhu to refuse, Fatty Wang drove away directly. This guy is still so impatient. Shaking his head helplessly, Qin Zhu muttered a few times in frustration. Let's go in first. Seeing more and more people looking at them, the beautiful ladies helplessly pulled Qin Zhu into the hotel. After arriving at the front desk and booking a suite, Qin Zhu and the others took a short nap in the room to adjust to the jet lag. While Qin Zhu was still immersed in his sleep, the alumni group had already started to explode. Fatty, what did you say? Landlord Qin caught up with the campus belle of our school. That's right, Fatty, you have to be responsible for what you say. When did our landlord Qin get together with the campus belle? I think it must be that Fatty didn't take his medicine today. Landlord Qin was still in the United States yesterday. How could he come back so soon? For a moment, the alumni group, which had been relatively calm, suddenly became as lively as a boiling pot. The reason for this was also due to a sentence and a photo posted by Fatty Wang Ming in the group. In fact, it was nothing. He just sent the photo of the two kissing that he had just taken at the airport to the group, and added a note on the side, introducing the identity of the woman in detail. But this news is no less than a small earthquake for the otakus who are still barely making ends meet. Because back then in school, Zhu Wenguo was also a celebrity, dominating the school beauty list for 4 years. She could be said to be gentle and virtuous. The most important point is that this girl is very self-disciplined. In 4 years of college, she has not had a single scandal. But such a perfect woman was actually captured by her companion, the person who once set scores with her. Chapter 757 Shopping and Chatting. The atmosphere of the dinner was rather strange. No one was talking at the table. Except for the clinking sound of chopsticks and bowls colliding, everything else seemed quiet. Even Wang Ming, who usually talked the most and was the most active, was unusually silent today. After a while, Wang's father broke the silence. However, Wang's father did not get to the point right away, but started to talk about all sorts of things. As a result, there were only the voices of Wang's father and Qinzyu's constant echoing at the table. Qinzyu could not help but feel that something was wrong. Even the beautiful lady Zhu, who did not know the two of them well, felt that the atmosphere at the table was a little wrong. Quietly touching Qinzyu's thigh under the table, the beautiful lady Zhu began to exchange glances with her lover. Today's meal is unusual. Yes, I feel the same way. Then what should we do? Say goodbye and go back now? That's not a good idea. Wait a little longer and see what they want to do. After the brief eye contact, Qinzyu and the other two looked away and looked around the villa. Xiaozu, look, what's the situation with the thing I told you last time? Just when Qinzyu was wandering in space, Wang's father, who had been talking in circles, finally brought the topic to the point. However, his sudden question made Qinzyu a little confused. Damn, what did you tell me? When did you tell me something? Just when Qinzyu was confused, Wang's father, who was sitting opposite, seemed a little anxious and reminded him. Wool, cowhide. Oh, this. Qinzyu slapped his thigh. After being reminded by Wang's father, he really remembered this. Speaking of this matter, it is actually quite simple. Because Wang Ming's family is engaged in textile and leather goods business, when he returned to China last time, he casually mentioned the interesting things on the ranch over there. However, what was unexpected was that Wang's father was still very sensitive to this industry. When Qinzyu heard what he said, he immediately became interested and began to discuss the feasibility of purchasing raw materials from the United States. Well, uncle, this matter is not a big problem, but you need to go over in person to negotiate the price after the new year. Sitting on the sofa, Qinzyu took a sip of the kung fu tea brewed by Wang's father, and immediately felt the fragrance lingering on his lips and teeth. He couldn't help but praise. It's really good tea. I didn't expect uncle's tea-making skills are not bad. It's old, it's not good. Shaking his head helplessly, Wang's father smiled and greeted Qinzyu again. After finishing the business, the scene got rid of the depressing atmosphere. After a while, laughter and joy came out. It was not until sitting in the BMW driven by Wang Ming and rushing to the hotel quickly that Wang Ming finally spoke. Well, third brother, I'm making fun of you. It's all my dad's tricks. What's the joke? Qinzyu waved his hand, sat up straight in the back seat, and then asked seriously. What's going on today? When talking about this, Wang Ming fell into silence again, staring blankly at the front, not knowing what he was thinking. It didn't matter that he was distracted, but Qinzyu and the three women in the back seat were very anxious. Hey, fatty, pay attention to the road and drive your car carefully. Oh, Wang Ming suddenly woke up and focused on driving again. It's nothing serious. It's just because of something that made me wake up from the confused daze. It would have been better if he didn't say it. After saying this, Qinzyu became more curious and wanted to pull a few people over and tell him the whole story. But fantasy is fantasy after all. In such a silent atmosphere, Qinzyu returned to the hotel. Early the next morning, Qinzyu accompanied Zhu Mengyu and took a taxi directly to Shinhui law firm. Just like there is a kind of feeling between men that is comparable to love, called brotherhood. On the women's side, there is also a kind of feeling that is comparable to love, that is, best friends. Several women who had been separated for many days gathered together and directly abandoned Qinzyu. There was no other way. In order to make the beauties happy, Qinzyu had to follow that three women obediently and act as a unique bag-carrying man. You know what, your man is really good. While pulling Zhu Mengyu to go shopping with her, Xing Wanton turned back to look at Qinzyu, with a look of curiosity and confusion in her eyes. As Zhu Mengyu's good friend and bestie, Xing Wanton was very curious and surprised that she and Qinzyu finally got together. Actually, Qinzyu is a very good person. We knew each other when he first came to the United States, but I didn't expect him to be with Mengyu. Surui said this. She knew Qinzyu very early and had a good impression of him. Hey, don't talk about me all the time. Where is your boyfriend? Take him out and let me see him. The beautiful Zhu, who was used to being trained by Qinzyu, now behaved in front of her besties, without any restraint after being teased. Why? Speaking of this, Surui smiled bitterly and shook her head, sighing. How can we be so free? When it comes to love, what we say doesn't count. After hearing this, the mood of the three women present was a little depressed. Among the three, Zhu Mengyu was the happiest. Because of her own reasons, she didn't have to be developed as a marriage partner, but correspondingly, she also paid a painful price. If a woman can't have a child in this life, then she is really a failure. After shopping with two girlfriends for a day, when they finished the day's itinerary and rushed back to the hotel, Kinzu completely collapsed on the soft big bed, and didn't want to move a finger anymore. "Dear, you worked hard today, this is a reward for you." The beautiful Zhu, who was in a good mood today, leaned over and slapped Kinzu's old face. Feeling the soft touch on his body, Kinzu regained some energy. He stretched out his hands to stop the beautiful Zhu, who wanted to get up and leave, and said weakly, "Mengyo, stop working and go to bed." Zhu Mengyo rolled her eyes helplessly, and she forced herself to sit up, and also used her little body to make Kinzu sit up. "Hurry up and take a shower. You are sweating all over. You are not allowed to come up tonight if you don't take a shower." "Ah, no way, you still need to take a shower." Kinzu complained weakly, turned over lazily, and continued to squint his eyes. He had already decided that he would not get up no matter what. What a joke, it's so cold, why get up? Besides, he's been tired all day. Even he has a moment of exhaustion. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en sinisfuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 758. Restaurants that require reservations. The next morning, Kinzu took Zhu Mengyu and boarded the train back to his hometown. As for the eldest and fourth sons, because it was close to the end of the year, they came to Jiangnan to accompany their families, and the two families had different schedules, so they agreed to meet again after the new year. "Dear, do you think your family will like me?" After getting on the train, a trace of anxiety appeared on the pretty face of the beautiful Zhu. "Hehe, don't worry, my parents are very easy to talk to." Kinzu smiled and held the beautiful woman's slender waist, and comforted her softly. Thanks to the rapid development of the country, Kinzu didn't have to squeeze the slow and crowded green train this time. Because the emu to their place had been officially opened more than a month ago after more than a year of construction. When Kinzu saw the news at the station, he returned the ticket he had already bought without saying a word. Although the emu only goes to the city, it is faster than taking an ordinary train. Really? They really won't dislike me. Nestled in her lover's arms, Zhu Mengyu, who was always calm no matter what she faced, felt her heartbeat speed up for the first time. "Don't worry, my parents must like you very much." Kinzu smiled helplessly. This girl has asked this question no less than 100 times since morning. But he also knew that the reason why that beautiful lady Zhu was like this was that she cared about him very much. Kinzu was still a little happy about this. Time passed quickly. While Kinzu was constantly comforting the beautiful lady, the train had begun to slow down and slowly stopped on the platform. Following the flow of people, Kinzu pulled the somewhat nervous Zhu Mengyu out of the station. "Xiao Zhu, this way." As soon as the two of them left the station, they were spotted by the sharp-eyed Li Jianhua, who quickly waved his hands to signal. "That's our brother-in-law. Remember to call him brother-in-law later." Kinzu whispered while pulling Zhu Mengyu over there. The beautiful Zhu rolled her eyes coquettishly at him. Although she was a little nervous, she was not so rude. "Right. Brother-in-law, you must have waited for a long time." Pulling Zhu Mengyu closer, Kinzu casually put the luggage into the trunk and introduced with a smile. "This is Zhu Mengyu, my wife." Zhu Mengyu called him brother-in-law obediently, which made the usually steady Li Jianhua a little embarrassed. There was no way. Who made the beautiful Zhu dress up carefully before coming today? She was not short to begin with, and now she was wearing white riding boots, which made her long legs look straighter and slender, and her figure also looked particularly tall. She was wearing a slim pink coat and a white wool scarf around her neck. With her delicate facial features that were slightly made up, she looked like she had walked out of a painting. It was not until he heard a cute greeting that Li Jianhua reacted and said hurriedly, "Hello, Zhu Mengyu, right. Get in the car first, and we'll talk when we get back." Seeing this, Zhu Mengyu responded obediently, and after Kinzu opened the car door for her, she sat directly in. After she got in the car, Kinzu also sat in, smiled and looked at Li Jianhua in the driver's seat, and asked, "Brother-in-law, how is the business in the store? How do you have time to come and pick us up in person?" Li Jianhua's personality is still relatively stable. After a moment of distraction, he has recovered at this moment. Hearing Kinzu's words, he started the car and said with a smile, "No matter how busy I am, I will definitely come to pick you up when you come back." After a pause, the smile on his face became brighter, and then he said, "The business of the store is getting better and better now. It is impossible for individual customers to go directly to our restaurant to get a seat now. They have to make an appointment in advance." As soon as the voice fell, there was a somewhat incredible exclamation from the back seat. "So popular?" Li Jianhua looked through the review mirror and introduced with a smile. "Yes, not only that, our restaurant's reservations are basically scheduled for a week later." As he said that, he shook his head with some emotion. "I really didn't know that there are so many rich people in our small county." After listening to the introduction of the current situation of the restaurant, the two people in the back seat were in completely opposite moods at the moment. Zhu Mengye was naturally happy about this grand occasion. Others didn't know. How could she not know? This restaurant that is now full every day is the masterpiece of this tall and strong man next to her. And what about Qin Zhu? His brows were furrowed now, which made the two people in the car a little puzzled. After hearing that the restaurant was not only overcrowded, but also that the reservations were scheduled for a week, Qin Zhu did not feel happy, and even his mood was exactly the opposite of Zhu Mengye's. "Brother-in-law, this won't work. We have to prepare to open a branch." "Why?" Li Jianhua asked in surprise. Now the first restaurant has not been sorted out, how can he have the energy to open another one? Moreover, he thinks the current situation is just right. Seeing Li Jianhua's confused face, Qin Zhu shook his head helplessly, changed his mind, and asked, "Brother-in-law, where do you think our restaurant is positioned?" "Positioning? What positioning?" This novel term distracted Li Jianhua a little, and the car started a drift toward directly on the national highway. Hey, brother-in-law, you concentrate on driving, we will talk about it when we get back." Qin Zhu was shocked by this sudden change, and he didn't care about preaching, and quickly asked Li Jianhua to drive well. Li Jianhua was a little embarrassed for his negligence, smiled awkwardly, and gathered his mind to concentrate on driving. Along the way, although they didn't talk about the restaurant, the three of them still talked and laughed, so they didn't feel bored. Soon, a clean Land Rover followed the national highway, and under the driving of Li Jianhua, it arrived at the downstairs of the community where his sister lived in the county town. "Hey, brother-in-law, haven't my parents moved back yet?" Qin Zhu saw that he had come here, and couldn't help but look at Li Jianhua in front of him with some curiosity. "They have already moved back." Li Jianhua smiled, opened the car door and walked down. "Isn't it your sister?" She refused to go back first and insisted on squeezing into the same car with us. Qin Zhu touched his nose, and his eyes involuntarily glanced at the beautiful Zhu beside him. He was sure that his sister's purpose of not wanting to go back was nothing more than wanting to see her girlfriend first. Chapter 759. Small Country House. As Qin Zhu expected, after Li Jianhua made a phone call, Qin Wan couldn't wait to run down. Moreover, the first thing she did when she got in the car was to stare at Zhu Mengye in the back seat, which made the beautiful Zhu, who had already let go of herself, blush. She then withdrew her gaze with satisfaction. "This is Mengye, she is so beautiful. I'm the elder sister of this stinky boy. You can just call me elder sister from now on." After Qin Wan withdrew her gaze, Zhu Mengye breathed a sigh of relief and said in a sweet voice, "Sister." Seeing Zhu Mengye so obedient, Qin Wan's already satisfied expression became even more satisfied. She kept nodding and praising. "She is so beautiful. I don't know what kind of shit luck this boy has. He can actually find such a beautiful wife." Qin Zhu was stunned watching from the side. Finally, after hearing his sister talking to herself, he rolled his eyes helplessly. "Sister, don't scare me, this is Mengye's first time here." Before Qin Wan could speak, Zhu Mengye hurriedly said, "It's okay, I'm not that timid." At this time, Qin Wan was also muttering in front with some dissatisfaction. "You little bastard, you say bad things about me right away, just wait for me." At this time, it was still the brother-in-law who couldn't stand it anymore, and hurried out to smooth things over, saying, "Okay, let's go quickly, if we go too late, we probably won't even have food to eat." Hearing the brother-in-law talking about the time, Qin Zhu raised his hand and looked at it, and immediately became uneasy. "Hurry, brother-in-law, let's go quickly, if we don't leave, we'll really be hungry in the afternoon." Seeing that everyone had agreed, Li Jianhua started the car and drove to the countryside with a smile. On the way, Qin Zhu looked at his sister and brother-in-law in front of him and asked curiously, "Where are Tongton and Lily? Why can't I see the two little guys?" Hearing Qin Zhu's question, Qin Wan stretched out her hand to stroke her hair on her forehead, and smiled a little embarrassedly. Tongton and Lily went there yesterday, and they are waiting for you in their hometown. Kinzu was stunned and rolled his eyes speechlessly. Just to see his girlfriend in advance, his sister is too hard, isn't she? As if he noticed something wrong in Kinzu's eyes, Li Jianhua, who was sitting in the front row, glanced at his wife and explained helplessly. Well, it happened that Dad came over yesterday, and Tongton and Lily went back with him first. Kinzu sneered at this explanation, but he didn't say anything, just thought it was a little funny. Talking and laughing all the way, Zhu Mengyu and Qinwan gradually became familiar with each other. And Qinwan was more and more satisfied with her future brother-in-law, and kept praising Kinzu in front of the beautiful Zhu. In Qinwan's mouth, Kinzu became a little Superman who could do everything and was not afraid of anything. Kinzu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although his sister was doing this for his own good, wasn't it a little too fake? What was even more unexpected to Kinzu was that the beautiful Zhu accepted all of his sister's remarks, and the two even discussed them heatedly. As the focus of the two women's discussion, Kinzu could only stare blankly and couldn't say a word. Fortunately, the county town was not far away from the village. After half an hour's drive, the Land Rover turned around and turned onto a dirt road, heading towards the village. Fortunately, we bought a Land Rover off-road vehicle. If it was a family car, the chassis would definitely be scrapped if we drove on our road. While driving the car skillfully, Li Jianhua shook his head helplessly, and seemed very dissatisfied with the road conditions. Kinzu sat in the swaying off-road vehicle, looking at the bumpy road outside, and felt a little hesitant. He was considering whether to invest in the renovation of the road leading to the village. Because the news that he had made a fortune outside had spread widely as the building at home was built. Although no one knew how much wealth he had now, everyone knew that it must be quite a lot. In this way, if he didn't do something good for his hometown after becoming rich, it would be criticized. But Kinzu hesitated because the price of building a road must be very high. Even if it was the most ordinary cement road, it would cost hundreds of thousands to build this road. In this way, he clearly told everyone that he had indeed made a fortune outside. Oh, it's so confusing. Kinzu sighed a little depressed, and swayed listlessly with the car. Honey, what's wrong with you? The beautiful Zhu beside him was very sensitive to Kinzu's sigh, and couldn't help asking curiously. It's almost home, even if I have to sigh and feel nervous, it should be me, right? Kinzu came back to his senses and smiled as he told his worries. After hearing Kinzu's idea, the first one to object was Qinwan. No, Xiao Zhu, even if you have money, you can't spend it like this. How can it be so simple to build a road? Don't you feel bad if you throw tens of millions into it? Li Jianhua was very supportive of his brother-in-law's idea. I think Xiao Zhu's consideration makes sense. As long as it is within the scope of ability and can help the family, it is still necessary. Zhu Mengyu also nodded in agreement, with a bright smile on her face. It's just building a road. This is a good deed. If you build a road, the villagers will definitely remember you. Kinzu was very satisfied with the reactions of the two, but Qinwan didn't agree with them. Mengyu, you must take good care of this guy in the future. You can't spend money like this. Zhu Mengyu smiled and nodded in agreement. The exquisite makeup on her face made Qinwan, who was also a woman, jealous. Okay, let's go back and talk about it. Let's consult my parents first. After being reminded by Qinwan, Kinzu felt that such a big thing should at least be communicated with his family. Of course, at this time, he had subconsciously ignored the ridiculous things he had done before. Time will always pass, and the road will eventually come to an end. Under the control of Li Jianhua's superb driving skills, although the Land Rover was a little bumpy, it still stopped steadily at the gate of a small garden house. Is this the house you built for your uncle and aunt? Originally, Zhu Mengyu thought that Kinzu's hometown, even if it was not the kind of shabby one, would be a very shabby old house. This has nothing to do with net worth and wealth, because many people will have a nostalgic mind. But looking at the small country house in front of her, which is not much worse than the villas in big cities, Zhu Mengyu's mood can be imagined. Chapter 760 The ugly daughter-in-law meets her parents-in-law. Kinzu paid for the villa, which was designed by a designer. It covers an area of 4 or 5 acres. In addition to the garden, lawn, and swimming pool, there are also tennis courts, badminton courts and other places. Anyway, no matter whether it is useful or not, it is all designed according to those luxury houses in big cities. Moreover, because his own homestead was not enough, he specially purchased the homesteads of several families next door, so that the villa could be built. Kinzu's extravagance, King's father and mother, who have always been frugal, did not say anything this time, but let him toss. As for why? It's a very simple reason, it's face. In the countryside, although it is important not to show off wealth, it is more important to save face. Their son has made a lot of money, and building a big house for them in the village is quite glorious for parents. The Land Rover did not stop. After opening the gate of the villa, it drove directly into the main road paved with cement. Soon, after bypassing two small bends, the Land Rover stopped in front of a 30-story building. At this moment, King's father, mother, younger sister Kinru, and the two little guys Tongton and Lily were all waiting at the door. "Dad, Mom, I'm back." Kinzu opened the car door and got out first, with an excited smile on his face. Even though life in the United States is very good, no matter where you are, it can't compare to your home. King's father and mother greeted their son happily when they got out of the car. The smiles on their faces made Kinzu feel warm in his heart. Just when Kinzu was about to give the two elders a warm hug, he saw the two elders bypass him and greet Zumengyo, who had not yet gotten out of the car. "Is this Yoo? She is more beautiful than in the video." Yes, now she looks more beautiful than in the video. Look at this face shape, and the white skin, it's really more beautiful the more you look at it. The two elders pulled Zumengyo, who was a little unresponsive, and kept praising her, which made Zumengyo a little at a loss. Kinzu touched his nose awkwardly, turned around and looked at his mother and father, and said with a wry smile, "Mom, let's go inside first, we can't just stand outside all the time." As soon as this was said, King's father and mother also reacted and hurriedly greeted, "Come on, Yo-yo, let's go inside." As they said that, they enthusiastically pulled the beautiful Zhu and walked into the villa. Zumengyo also reacted at this time. She was also very happy about the enthusiasm of Kinzu's parents. Seeing that Li Jianhua had not returned from parking the car, she hurriedly said, "Uncle, Aunt, let's wait for my brother-in-law and the others, let's go in together." "It's okay, let's go in first." King's mother kept walking, with a bright smile on her face, and said, "It's cold outside, let Shiaxu wait outside." Kinzu was sweating when he heard it from behind. "It seems that you also know that it's cold outside, Mom." However, he has no right to speak now. After seeing such a beautiful daughter-in-law, his status as a son has directly dropped to the lowest point. After the two old people took Zumengyo and Kinwan into the villa, Kinru, who had been squeezed outside and could not speak, finally had a chance. The little girl ignored the two nephews and rushed over to hug Kinzu's arm, looking at Kinzu with admiration. "Brother, is that my sister-in-law just now? She is so beautiful." Kinzu came back to his senses, smiled and touched his little sister's black hair, and comforted her. "What's this? When our little sister grows up, she will definitely be prettier than your sister-in-law." "What?" The little girl took Kinzu's big hand away from her head with some dissatisfaction, and muttered, "I'm not a child anymore, don't touch my head all the time." Kinzu was stunned, and then laughed, and said while laughing, "Well, Alshiara is no longer a child, she has become a big child." This made Kinru angry, and she bared her little tiger teeth at Kinzu in dissatisfaction, turned around and ran into the villa. Not only that, she also pulled Tongton and Lily along. Obviously, she also wanted to see the new sister-in-law who had amazed her just now. However, the two little guys were not giving face to their aunt now. Before she could say anything, the two little guys shook off their aunt and threw themselves into the arms of their uncle. Uncle, when are you going to take Lily or Tongton to ride a pony?" Kinzu was a little helpless. Ever since the two little guys knew about the existence of ponies, they have been clamoring to raise a pony. But given the situation at his sister's home, how could the two little guys' ideas come true? After all, his home was neither an American ranch nor a spacious farmyard. Where would he get enough space to raise a pony for them? The thought flashed through his mind for just a moment, and Kinzu picked up the two little guys, and asked with a smile, "Want to ride a pony?" The two little guys nodded in unison, especially Tongton, who boldly said, "Tongton wants to ride a pony, and Uncle promised me." "Ah, really?" Kinzu smiled awkwardly, and then asked, "Then have you been naughty at home?" This time, the two little guys shook their heads in unison and said in unison, "No, we are the most obedient." Kinzu curled his lips, it would be strange if they were not naughty. However, he just asked casually. After hearing the performance of the two little guys, he followed his little sister inside and said with a smile, "Is that so? Then when you go to the United States, Uncle will take you to ride a pony, okay? Go to the United States?" Lady Lay raised his head with some hope and asked expectantly, "Uncle, when will Martin let us go to the United States?" "Don't worry, Uncle will take you to the United States after the new year, okay?" Walking into the living room of the villa, Kinzu did not see Xiumengyo. After sitting down on a sofa, he smiled and asked the two little guys in his arms, Okay. Tongton and Lily became happy when they heard that they could go to the United States after the new year. Especially Tongton, who was a little devil, took advantage of Kinzu's inattention and smacked him on the face. "Tongton, Lily, don't always make trouble with your uncle, come down quickly." After entering the door, Li Jianhua saw his two children, who were pestering his brother-in-law again, and hurriedly spoke out to stop them. Kinzu heard the voice, but waved his hand nonchalantly. "Brother-in-law, it's okay. You, don't spoil these two guys too much, they are so naughty all day long." Li Jianhua came to sit on the sofa, looked around, and didn't find his wife, so he smiled and chatted with Kinzu. Kinzu smiled, but didn't respond, but asked, "By the way, I'm going to the United States after the new year. Is there any problem here?" Chapter 761 The difference between relatives and outsiders. The news that Kinzu had returned with a beautiful wife for the new year had spread throughout the village the next day. Many people who thought they had a good relationship with the Qin family would find opportunities to come and visit, and see the beautiful city girls. Of course, as for what their purpose was, that was another matter. Xiaozu is really amazing now. An old man with dry skin and a thin body was sitting in the living room at this moment. He was reluctant to light a cigarette in his hand. He looked at Kinzu, who was sitting next to him, with a sigh and asked, "It's only been a few years since you graduated. I heard that you have already opened a company abroad. It's just a small quarrel, not worth mentioning." Kinzu smiled and nodded, and did not deny it, but asked, "Uncle, I heard that Brother Wenhua is about to graduate from college." "Yes," the old man called Uncle Le, but Kinzu turned the cigarette in his hand around, and looked at Kin's father with some envy. At this moment, when he heard Kinzu asking about his son, he immediately perked up. "Wenhua will graduate from college in half a semester. Xiaoxiu, is your company still hiring? How about letting Wenhua come over to help you?" Kinzu was happy when he heard this. He didn't rush to refuse, but asked with a smile, "Uncle, how is Wenhua's English? Is there any problem with daily communication? After all, we have to deal with foreigners." This. Uncle Le was speechless for a while. How did he know how good his son's English was? So, he said awkwardly, "Well, Xiaoxiu, I don't know yet. How about I go back and call Wenhua later?" Kinzu didn't have any objections. He smiled and nodded, indicating that there was no problem here. But Uncle Le was different. Seeing that Kinzu didn't make any clear expressions, he tentatively asked, "If Wenhua's English is okay, I will let him come to you." Kinzu was stunned. When did he say he would recruit people? However, since it was already like this, and they were relatives, Kinzu didn't say anything else, but smiled and nodded to greet him. "Anyway, I'm going to open a store in the United States. As long as my English is good, it would be nice to send it to the store. Besides, with the English level of college students nowadays, they learn it just to cope with the exam. How many of them can communicate with foreigners orally?" After Uncle Le left, Kin's father asked worriedly, "Xiaozu, is it okay to arrange for your brother Wenhua to go abroad? What will happen?" Kinzu looked at his father curiously, not knowing what he meant. That. Halfway through, Kin's father got stuck and couldn't find a good adjective for a long time. Kinzu wanted to laugh when he saw this, but he was afraid of embarrassing his father, so he kept holding it back. Fortunately, after thinking for a long time, Kin's father finally remembered what that sentence said. So, he quickly asked, "It's that family business. Don't they always say that it's best to run a company or a factory without family talents?" Kinzu heard this and looked at his father dumbly. He didn't expect him to think so far. However, he shook his head and explained with a smile, "It's not that exaggerated. How many relatives can a person have in his lifetime? As long as it's not too much, it's good to help a little." In fact, Kinzu disagreed with those so-called sayings that it's not good to ask family members to do things when opening a company. After all, not everyone's relatives are so weird. For example, for the same position, family members may be greedy for small benefits, but when they are really used, they work extra hard. But what about outsiders? Are they not greedy? No, they are more greedy, as long as there is a chance. and after taking advantage of small benefits, family members will still work seriously and remember your kindness. What about outsiders? When they take your money, everything you say is good, but once they have no money, they will turn around and leave. But family members are different. If you are temporarily unable to make ends meet, it's okay to pay your salary a few months later. Outsiders, why don't you try to pay your salary a few days later? The thoughts in his mind turned, and Kinzu felt that he should ask a few family members to help. Unfortunately, before he could figure it out, he was interrupted by his younger sister's naughty voice. "Brother, can you take me and my sister-in-law to the market?" Market? Kinzu was a little stunned. This word gave him a feeling that was both familiar and unfamiliar. Yes, today is our turn to have a market. It's already the end of the year. If we don't go now, there will be no more. Kinzu looked up at Zumengyo, who was following behind Kinyo, and asked with a smile, "How about it? Let's go and have a look." Zumengyo nodded indifferently and replied with a smile, "Then let's go and have a look." Hearing the two agree, Kinru cheered and ran upstairs. "Hey, aren't you going out? Why are you going upstairs?" However, before he finished speaking, he saw the beautiful Zhu next to him also grinning at him. "Just wait for a while, wait for me to go upstairs and change clothes before coming down." Kinzu was sweating. He finally knew why so many men change color when talking about their girlfriends shopping. It's not that they don't have money, but they can't stand their indecisive style of doing things. In order to pick a piece of clothing, women often walk all over the street, compare several stores, and finally come to the boss to look at the house for a few cents. Looking at Zumengyo's back as she went upstairs, King's father, who was sitting on the sofa drinking tea, suddenly said, "This girl is really good, what does her family do?" Kinzu paused, hesitated for a while, and then said, "Yoyo's family are all civil servants, in Beijing and Jiangnan, very prestigious." Civil servants? King's father didn't understand for a moment. What the hell is this civil servant? Kinzu was helpless, and then he explained. It means being an official. Their family members are all officials. Ah? From Beijing? And an official? King's father looked up at his son in surprise, but his face showed a few traces of worry involuntarily, and asked hurriedly, "Has Yoyo told her family? What did they say?" "Dad, don't worry." Kinzu knew what his father was worried about, and smiled and comforted. "Yoyo's family is very good, and I'm not a poor boy with nothing now." King's father was relieved when he heard it. Yes, his eldest son is no longer an ordinary college student who just graduated from school, but a big boss with assets of hundreds of millions. Seeing his father's expression become relaxed, Kinzu also showed a smile on his face, but he was not as relaxed as he showed on his face. "Thank you Zunran for the 1,100 book coins reward. Thank you Chu Jingdi Happiness for the 888 book coins reward. Thank you." Chapter 762. Rumors. After staying at home for only one day, Kinzu had an urge to go back to the United States. It is said that the rich have distant relatives in the mountains, and the poor have no one to care about in the downtown. I don't know which guy spread the news that his company was going to recruit people in the village, and the news became more and more outrageous. Some said that Kinzu recruited people to work in the United States, and they would herd cattle every day there, and their monthly salary would be over 10,000 yuan in RMB. Others said that Kinzu recruited people to work in American companies, and they would become small leaders and help him manage the company, with several foreigners under them. There were also rumors that Kinzu had too many companies in the United States, and now he wanted his family to help manage the company, with a monthly salary of hundreds of thousands. Anyway, now everyone who had some connection with Kinzu's family came to join in the fun. "Mom, this won't work." Kinzu had just sent off a distant cousin, and he collapsed on the soft sofa in the living room weakly, no longer excited and warm at the beginning. Yes. The younger sister Kinru was also fiddling with her hair out of boredom, with a bitter face, and said helplessly, "Now whenever I go out, I am stopped by people asking questions. It's so annoying." King's mother couldn't do anything about it. Although these were distant relatives, you couldn't just turn them away when they came to your house, right? She could only sigh helplessly and blame the guy who spread the news everywhere. As for who spread it, there was no need to think about it at all. Who else could it be except Uncle Lee yesterday? King's father was also sitting on the sofa on the other side smoking a cigarette. He felt a little annoyed now, and no longer had the feeling of glory and face at the beginning. In just this day, there were no less than 10 waves of people coming to visit. Some of them sat for a few minutes and left when someone came, while others were so thick-skinned that they didn't leave unless they asked to drive them away. But if they don't leave on their own, you can't really drive them away, right? If you don't drive them away, they will have to stay and eat together. The problem is that they just moved in, and the family has nothing prepared. Kinzu had no choice but to call the restaurant in town and ask them to deliver the food. 3 or 4 tables were set up at home in the morning alone, thanks to the move to a new house, which has enough space. Thinking of this, King's father raised his head, looked at the old and young who were frowning, and suggested, "How about taking this opportunity to hold a housewarming party? Shucks you can explain it to everyone." Housewarming party? Kinzu looked at his parents in surprise. "You haven't done it yet?" After flicking the ash in his hand, King's father showed a rare smile on his face. "You haven't come back yet? What should we do?" "We're just waiting for you to come home to prepare together." "That's fine." Kinzu nodded, feeling a little warm in his heart, and smiled. "Then you count the number of people first. I'll go to the town to invite a few chefs tomorrow, and we'll do it at home." "Okay, then it's settled." King's father and mother discussed it again, and the matter was settled. As for Kinwan and brother-in-law, they are still outside seeing off the guests. There was no other way. King's father and mother were elders, so it was inappropriate for them to go out and see them off. Kinzu had to accompany his young wife, so he didn't want to go. His little sister was also very lazy, and now she was still curled up on the sofa and refused to get up. After all the calculations, Kinwan had no choice but to pull her husband out to see the guests off with a helpless look on her face. In the bedroom, Kinzu ignored the sweat stains on both of them, put his arms around Zumengyo's slender waist, and asked with a smile, "How is it? Didn't I scare you today?" The beautiful Zhu lay lazily in her lover's arms, her face still full of blushes, and she gave Kinzu a charming look, and said coquettishly, "Why do you look like you think of me as a spoiled young lady? Am I the kind of person?" Kinzu smiled awkwardly and touched his nose. He didn't feel that way when he was abroad, but when he returned to China, thinking about the beauty's identity, he couldn't help but feel a little scared. Seeing that the beauty was a little angry, Kinzu had to change the subject and asked, "Well, you won't go back for the new year, have you told your family?" "Yes." Zumengyo moved her body, squeezed into Kinzu's arms, changed to a comfortable position, and then said a little weakly, "They don't have time to take care of me now, they are too busy with their own things." Kinzu thought about it. If Zumengyo was valued at home, she would not have been in the United States for so long without anyone taking care of her. Thinking of this, Kinzu's hand around the beauty's waist tightened again. "Baby, don't worry, your husband will treat you well in the future." Listening to the lover's words, Zumengyo felt sweet in her heart, but also a little sour. She wanted to ask, "Will you be good to me only?" But thinking about her physical condition, she suppressed this idea again, just squeezed her body into Kinzu's arms again, as if this was the only way to feel a little sense of security. Early the next morning, Kinzu rarely slept in, but got up early. He had to go to the town to find a chef today. The banquet would start at noon, so he couldn't delay. "Xiaozu, I asked someone yesterday. The restaurant at the east end of the town is responsible for this kind of banquet. You can go directly to them when you get there." King's father was packing things in the open space at the door. When he saw Kinzu coming out, he smiled and instructed, "Okay, I got it." Kinzu nodded, took his wallet, and took a few slices of bread and went out. The Land Rover was already parked at the door. After Li Jianhua handed the key to Kinzu, he was obediently led by Kinwan to help. Originally, according to his idea, he should just pull the chef at the restaurant over, but it was collectively rejected by everyone. It was not for anything else, but it felt a bit of a waste of talent. Kinzu opened the car door and was about to get in when his younger sister's pitiful voice came from behind. "Brother, please take me with you. I'm so bored at home." Turning his head, he saw Kinru wearing a short pink down jacket, looking at him expectantly. "What are you going to do?" Kinzu bit off the last bit of bread in his hand and wiped his hands with a tissue. "Why don't you help at home and come here to be a light bulb?" Kinru was so angry when her brother called her a light bulb. She didn't care whether he was willing or not. She opened the back door and ran up. "Sister-in-law, look at my brother. He's so annoying." As soon as she got in the car, the little girl hugged Zumengyo's arm and acted like a spoiled child. Being acted like a spoiled child by her sister-in-law, Zumengyo's mood instantly brightened, and even the corners of her mouth curved up involuntarily. "It's okay, Shaudra, if he doesn't take you, I will." Let's ignore him. Yeah, let's ignore him. I'll take you to the town for shopping later. Seeing that she had found an ally, Kinru nodded her head like a rattle. While talking, she looked at Kinzu with a provocative look. The meaning was obvious. Why don't you take me with you? Disdained by the two women, Kinzu shrugged helplessly. Who made him say the wrong thing? Okay, fasten your seatbelts, and let's go. Chapter 763. Sandonta Restaurant. After another bumpy ride, the Land Rover finally turned safely onto the national highway in the center of the town. This road must be repaired. If I drive a few more times, I'll be exhausted. Holding the steering wheel with one hand, Kinzu wiped the cold sweat from his forehead with lingering fear. If he hadn't driven a lot recently and had developed good driving skills, he might have hit the bottom based on the road conditions just now. Then repair it. Anyway, you don't lack the money for repairing the road. Zumengyo, who was behind, touched her forehead and looked at Kinru. Both of them were a little scared. Kinzu's sudden brake just now almost bounced them up. This is also thanks to the better shock absorption function of the Land Rover, otherwise it would be really unbearable. Brother, if you repair the road, don't let them drive the big car in again. The younger sister Kinru pouted her lips and suggested to Kinzu dissatisfiedly. What big truck? Kinzu looked around the road, looking for the restaurant at the east end of the town that his father mentioned, and asked casually. It's that big truck. Kinru pointed to a semi-trailer truck whizzing by the side of the road, and pouted. Originally this road was not bad, but since a few guys in the village and the neighboring village bought this kind of big truck, the road condition has been getting worse day by day. Following the direction of Kinru's finger, Kinzu also saw the big truck that was specially used to transport goods, and finally understood why this road was so bad. Can they drive such a big car in? Zumengyo looked back at the not-too-wide road, and then looked at the more than 10-meter-long truck going away, and asked with a little surprise. Haha, yo, don't underestimate my skills. Hearing Zumengyo's question, Kinzu smiled and replied in front. Not to mention that this road can allow two cars to pass side by side, even if it is a one-way street, people can still drive in. Speaking of this, Kinzu has a lot to say. He has seen people reverse with their own eyes, such a small place, but they just turned a semi-trailer over. Well, it seems that the old saying is right, since ancient times, there have been masters among the people. Zumengyo blinked her beautiful big eyes, and her sighing look was particularly moving. Kinzu was watching intently, but heard his little sister shouting from behind. Brother, the restaurant has passed, where are you going? Kinzu was embarrassed and looked around quickly. Sure enough, at the diagonal back, he saw a big red iron sign. On the big red sign, it was written, Sandonta Restaurant. He turned the car back with a frown on his face, stopped at the door, and several people opened the door and got out. This name is really good. The beautiful ladies you looked up at the Sandonta Restaurant, which was converted from a 2-story building, wrapped her coat around her body, and said with a little sigh. Kinzu smiled awkwardly and touched his nose. He also felt that the name of this restaurant was good. However, now is not the time to dwell on this. Now they are facing a very embarrassing problem. It seems that they came a little early and that door is not open at all. Brother, call, isn't there a phone upstairs? Kinru was not surprised at all and suggested directly. Hearing what his younger sister said, Kinzu realized that under the Sandonta Restaurant, there was a string of mobile phone numbers. Kinzu took out his mobile phone and was about to dial, but suddenly put it down. Little sister, lend me a mobile phone. Helplessly, he stretched out his hand to his younger sister, because at this time he suddenly remembered that he was still using a foreign mobile phone number. Kinru heard this and first glanced at Kinzu. Seeing that he was serious, she took off her newly acquired rose gold mobile phone from her slender neck and handed it over reluctantly. She only got this new mobile phone yesterday, and now she is in the most excited mood. If it weren't for her brother's hand, she really wouldn't be willing to take it out. Even now that her brother personally reached out to her, she still felt a little reluctant to give it up. The reluctant expression on her face seemed to be afraid that Kinzu would take it and not return it to her. Brother, be careful, don't break it. Kinzu rolled his eyes helplessly, looked at Zumengyo who was laughing beside him, and smiled and said, It's okay, if it breaks, ask your sister-in-law to buy you another one, she is also a little rich. This rose gold mobile phone was the gift that Zumengyo gave to her sister-in-law yesterday. Moreover, it was bought again when she was in Jiangnan. There was no other way. The gifts sent from the United States had not arrived yet, so she could only buy a few small gifts in Jiangnan and bring them over. Although Qin Zhu persuaded her again and again, Zhu Wenguo still insisted on her own ideas. It's the first time to visit, you can't go empty-handed, right? Qin Zhu was helpless and had to accompany her to Jiangnan shopping mall again. Fortunately, she only bought a mobile phone for her younger sister, and the others were waiting for the gifts to be sent. As for the teasing of her lover, the beautiful Zhu, who was in a good mood, ignored it directly, took Qin Zhu's hand, and said in a tender voice, "Xiaoru, you have to please your brother more. He uses a limited edition. Ask him to get one for you." Limited edition? The little girl looked at her brother with shining eyes. She remembered that the man next to her was a big local tyrant. Ignoring the two beauties, one big and one small, whispering to each other, Qin Zhu picked up his mobile phone and called the number on the billboard. The phone was connected after only 2 rings, and a middle-aged man's voice came from it. "Hello, who is this?" Qin Zhu half leaned on the Land Rover and said with a smile, "Hello, are you the owner of the restaurant in the east end of the town?" "Yes, I am." "What's up?" "It's not time for dinner yet." As he said that, the guy yawned. Obviously he hadn't gotten up yet. Qin Zhu looked at the time. It was not even 7 o'clock yet. He felt that he had come a little early, and asked embarrassedly, "It's like this. I moved to a new house here. I'm going to hold a banquet at noon today. I want to invite you to cook. Do you have time?" Hearing that it was a big business, the person on the other end became enthusiastic and smiled and said, Yes, I don't know how many tables you want to set up. How much does it cost per table?" Qin Zhu remembered the number of people his father estimated yesterday, and said, "Probably about 10 tables. As for the price, it depends on your dishes." The man on the other end of the phone calculated that if there were 10 tables, even if he chose the lowest price, he would make more money than opening a restaurant by himself. So he smiled and said, "Okay, I'm in the store now. If you have time, come to the store to discuss it." Qin Zhu looked up at the closed door, touched his nose helplessly. "Well, I'm at the door of your store now." Chapter 764 Housewarming Party. At noon, the new villa of Qin Zhu's family was bustling with people. This time, not only Qin Zhu's distant relatives came from far away after hearing the news. Even the neighbors and some prestigious elders in the village were invited by Qin's father. Finally, 12 tables were set up in the open air on a large open space made of pebbles in front of the villa. It was not that Qin Zhu did not want everyone to eat in the villa, but there was really no room inside. Well, Qin Zhu admitted that he really did not want a large group of people to wander around in the new house. Qin's father and mother had no objection to this. Anyway, they all meant the same thing. The Qin family is completely prosperous. The village party secretary looked at the magnificently decorated villa and said with some emotion, "When Qin Zhu just graduated from college, some people looked down on this kid and thought that going to college was nothing. What about now? Yes, there were many people gossiping at the beginning, but now he is prosperous." A tall, thin old man who was of a higher generation at the same table agreed while smoking a cigarette. "Let's talk about this cigarette, Jiazhen. It seems to be more than 100 yuan a box, and we smoke it like this." Another old man was playing with a box of cigarettes in his hand, and he was also feeling that the Qin family had a good son. But what he didn't know was that Qin's mother had nagged him a lot for this matter. According to her original intention, buying a few boxes of locally produced golden leaf would be fine, and at most 2 boxes of hard thonghua would be enough to support the occasion. As a result, Qin Zhu bought a box of jiazhen, which made Qin's mother feel distressed and almost asked him to return it. Qin Zhu was helpless about this. Although he was not the kind of person who liked to pretend, now that he had the opportunity to make his parents hold their heads high, how could he not do it? You can tell by the way those people looked at him now. They were full of envy. After a long busy day, at noon, it was finally time to eat. And looking at the big table of delicacies in front of them, many people had already started to swallow their saliva. Let's not talk about the whole chicken, the whole duck, and the big trotters. Mutton and beef are just the foil. Hairy crabs, lobsters, abalone and other high-end seafood are the main force. In order to hold such a luxurious banquet, the boss of the east end of the town accompanied Qin Zhu to sweep all the seafood markets in the county. Come on, everyone, don't be polite, eat and drink well." Qin's father, who had been honest all his life, looked at most of the people in the village and stood up without knowing what to say, so he greeted everyone to eat directly. Fortunately, most of the people here are honest farmers, and the focus of attention is also that table full of delicious food. No one cares what you say. However, when they were halfway through the meal, Kinzu stood up, and everyone's attention was focused on him, wanting to see what he would say. Kinzu did not disappoint them, and picked up a glass of white wine, smiling and saying, "Today is the big day of our family's housewarming. Here I would like to offer a glass to all the uncles and aunts. Let's drink first." After saying that, he raised his head and drank a small glass of white wine. After everyone picked up their glasses and drank it all, Kinzu said, "Well, everyone knows that I am currently running a ranch abroad. If you want to go with me after the new year, I have no objection. Although the salary is not very high, it is definitely not less." Speaking of this, Kinzu paused, looking at the group of young and old men who were happy at the scene, and continued, "However, when going to the United States, there is a most basic requirement." "What requirement, Xiaoxiu? Tell me quickly." As soon as Kinzu finished speaking, someone below began to shout, Yes, as long as I can make money, I will listen to your request." "That's right, I will listen to you, I promise to listen." Kinzu touched his nose. It seems that these guys think he is afraid that they will not listen. Is he such a superficial person? Kinzu's face was serious, and he said seriously, "It's okay to go to the United States with me, as long as you can use English proficiently to talk to foreigners." Now, the whole audience was stunned, and everyone looked at Kinzu in amazement. What a joke! You'll let a group of people who have basically never been to school learn English? Are you kidding us? Seeing that everyone was about to riot, Kinzu spread his hands helplessly. "Tell me, what if you don't know English when you go to the United States? Do I have to hire you to work and assign each of you a translator?" "Well, you don't need to assign one to each person, just one to a few people." After this, not only Kinzu was stunned, but also many people present were a little stunned, and everyone's eyes were cast on the guy who spoke. "Well, I'm just kidding, just kidding." Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Uncle Lu also looked a little embarrassed, and quickly waved his hands to indicate that he was joking. Kinzu, on the other hand, looked at the old man and felt a little helpless. He probably went back to ask his son yesterday, and knew that his son's English was not good and he could not go to the United States, so he spread the news. "Uncle La, didn't I tell you yesterday? As long as Brother Wenhua's English is good, I will take him to the United States." "Why are you in such a hurry? He is about to graduate from college, and his English will definitely be no problem." Kinzu's expression on his face was always smiling, but what he said made Uncle La feel a little embarrassed. Just as Kinzu expected, he called his son yesterday and asked for a long time, but the boy stammered and couldn't say anything. In the end, he was really pressed by him, so he admitted that he couldn't even communicate with foreigners, let alone communicate fluently. In the end, he had no choice but to spread the news, so that more people would come, and maybe the Qin family would give in. But who could have thought that Kinzu was going to die, and only after he passed the English test could he go with him. Seeing the awkward situation, Kinzu filled himself with another glass of white wine, raised it and said with a smile, "Uncles and aunts, I know you want your children to go out with me to make money, but the reality is here." Putting the glass down again, Kinzu supported the table with both hands, sighed and said, "It's not that I don't want to take them. As long as they pass the English test, I will take as many as I can. I also want to make our village better, and I also want everyone to make money. But after taking them out, I can't even communicate with others. What do you want me to do? Although you don't need to deal with too many people when you herd cattle on the ranch, you need to use English to do everything there. Even if you go to the supermarket, you don't know what to buy. How can this be possible?" Seeing Kinzu said this, the village party secretary who had been greeted in advance also picked up the glass and stood up. "Okay, old and young men, everyone listen to me. Wow, thank you for the 10,000 book coins reward from Gentleman Style. Liu has a new helmsman now, thank you very much. I will leave the additional update for now, as I have been physically and mentally exhausted from the recent move. Si estes escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en esfuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrarás la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 765 Borrowing Money. Time flies by in the blink of an eye, and people want to keep him, but they don't know where to start. It has been a week since Kinzu came back, and because of the cooperation of the village party secretary, the housewarming party that day was also very successful. Since that day, no one has mentioned asking Kinzu to help find a job outside. But just when the road was blocked here, something strange happened over there. What? How much money do you say he wants to borrow? Listening to his mother's words, Kinzu put down the food he picked up with chopsticks, thinking that there seemed to be something wrong with his ears. 500,000. King's father, who had been drinking silently, also put down his wine glass at this time. Yes, 500,000, that guy is really rude. He asked for 500,000 as soon as he opened his mouth. King's mother also said angrily. Mom, did you agree? Kinzu asked a little worriedly. How is it possible? Mother King glared at Kinzu unhappily. Am I so stupid that I would lend him 500,000 yuan to mess around with it? It's okay, it's okay. Kinzu breathed a sigh of relief. As long as he didn't lend it, it would be fine. It's not that he values 500,000 yuan. To him, it's just the money for a few cows. The key is that this loophole cannot be opened. No, it's not that this loophole cannot be opened. If a close relative, or his former good friend or good classmate came to borrow money, although he was not very happy, he would not say no. But the key is that the person who came to borrow money this time was too unreliable. Mom, did Uncle tell me what he wanted to do with so much money? After a brief shock, Kinzu also recovered and asked casually while eating the dishes cooked by Zumengyo. I asked, and it seems that they said it was for your brother Wenhua to do business. Mother Qin shook her head helplessly. Ahem, ahem. Kinzu was so shocked by the sudden news that he started coughing on the spot, almost choking. Did he hear it right? Wenhua had just graduated, and he dared to ask for 500,000 yuan to do business. It's not that Kinzu looked down on him, but this guy was not a troublemaker at all. Although he politely called his son brother Wenhua in front of Uncle, in fact, this guy was not as old as Kinzu. It can be said that when Kinzu was in college, this guy was still in high school. However, because this guy was older than him, Kinzu didn't want to call this guy uncle, so he just called him in such an inappropriate way. Anyway, even if Kinzu didn't call him anything now, no one would dare to say anything to him. It was precisely because he knew him that Kinzu knew what kind of person this guy was. When this guy was in high school, he skipped classes, fought, and acted like a hooligan. Fortunately, in the final college entrance examination, under the pressure of his parents, he finally did not fail, and successfully entered the university with a score that just passed the third-tier line. Well, it's called a university, but in fact it's just a junior college, and you can't choose your own major. As for whether there are any changes after entering the university, Kinzu doesn't know much. However, just because of the fake university he is in now, which he has never heard of, Kinzu said that he doesn't think highly of him at all. You, drink something quickly to calm down. Zumengyo's voice interrupted Kinzu's series of thoughts. She stretched out a white and tender jade hand and hurriedly picked up a glass of beer on the table and handed it over. With the other hand, she reached out and gently patted Kinzu's back, and said with a little amusement, "You are so old, but you are still not honest when eating." On the other side of the table, King's father and mother, who were originally sitting upright, looked at each other at this time, and nodded with satisfaction, and a smile hung on the corners of their mouths. As a parent, who doesn't want their children to live well? Seeing his son and his wife so loving, the depressed mood that he had just felt was swept away. Kinzu didn't know what his parents were thinking. He took the can of beer handed over by Zumengyo and drank several mouthfuls. Only then did he calm down a little, and the unstable breath in his chest and abdomen. Mom, did you hear wrong? Wenhua is doing business. What kind of business can he do? How should I know? I didn't ask him. Mother Qin sighed. Her mood, which had just improved, became a little depressed because of this. Seeing this, Kinzu didn't want to talk about this topic anymore, but smiled and said, Mom, just tell them that the family has no money. I'm not the kind to lend him 500,000 yuan to spend lavishly. Seeing that her son had made a decision, Mother Qin didn't say anything, but nodded silently in agreement. After the meal, Kinzu came to the second floor and lay down on his big bed. He said with some boredom, "This time it's too boring. Apart from those who want to go out to work, those who want to borrow money are meaningless." The beautiful Zhu followed Kinzu in and smiled and comforted him. Don't take it to heart. It's just because it has just started and everyone is still excited. Sitting down on the bed, the beautiful Zhu stretched out her hand to rub Kinzu's shoulders. The smile on her face was so gentle. She continued to comfort him. After a long time, everyone's enthusiasm will decrease, and those who don't benefit will no longer come here to bore themselves. Maybe. Kinzu turned over lazily, and directly embraced this graceful body in his arms. He rubbed the smooth face with his old face, and asked with a smile, "Are you bored at home? Do you want me to take you to the village for a walk?" "It's okay." Zumengyo squeezed into Kinzu's arms again and said coquettishly, "The gifts haven't arrived yet, what's there to see?" Kinzu knew that Zumengyo said that the gifts were still on the way. She not only prepared gifts for her family, but also for the neighbors in the village. But, unfortunately, the gifts haven't arrived yet. As a result, the beautiful Zhu didn't want to go out at all. There was no way, it was okay to just meet a simple neighbor. But if you meet a relative's child for the first time and don't express anything, it would be very rude. Kinzu knew what she was thinking when he saw her like that, and smiled and kissed her on the face. "We're not in the village, let's take you to the county." "Go to the county?" The beautiful Zhu was a little moved. She also wanted to see what this small county town in the central part of the country looked like. Although she passed by there last time, it was just passing by and she didn't look at it carefully at all. However, thinking about the country road from here to the town, the beautiful Zhu couldn't help but hesitate again. There's no way, the memory is just too deep. Chapter 766 Mysterious Visitor. The winter sun was shining brightly, illuminating the endless fields, creating waves of sparkling light. A dusty Land Rover off-road vehicle, driven by Kinzu, was traveling on this rugged country road. However, the destination was no longer in the county, but in the town. Just when Kinzu and his partner were discussing going to the county to play, his mother suddenly came upstairs and said with some confusion, "Have you sent anything? They said that they are just a collection point, and you have to go and pick it up yourself. They don't deliver it to your door." Kinzu and his partner were a little stunned when they heard this, and looked at each other, revealing a little surprise in their eyes. Is this considered a case of speaking of the devil, and the devil will come? However, since the express has arrived, it must be picked up. So Kinzu asked his brother-in-law to bring the car keys, and the two drove to the town. "It's so beautiful here." Looking out the window, Zumengyo would exclaim from time to time, feeling that everything was so new. It was the wheat growing season. Looking out of the car window, it was a green field that was dazzling. Kinzu didn't feel anything about it. He just smiled and agreed, but his eyes were fixed on the road ahead. He had to turn the steering wheel from time to time. It was really tiring. Anyway, after arriving in the town, Kinzu felt that he was sweating all over. He came to the post office, took out his mother's ID card, and received the things he sent smoothly. However, looking at the several large sacks lying in front of him, Kinzu felt helpless. He had used a pickup truck to tow it over, but there is no pickup truck here now. It is estimated that the people at the express collection point also expected this situation. At this time, a young man came out from inside. He first looked at Zumengyo with some surprise for several times, and then smiled and asked, "Boss, I think this is not easy for you to take it. Do you want me to call a small truck for you?" Kinzu just thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. He was not afraid of spending some money. Even if he could stuff these sacks into the Land Rover, he would probably have to clean it after taking the things back. Soon, a small van drove over under the contact of the young man with dyed yellow hair. However, when he heard that they were going to Kinzu's village, the driver of the small van looked a little embarrassed. "Brother, you don't have anything fragile here, right? I can help you pull it, but I don't care about the safety of the goods." After saying that, he probably felt that he was a little too much, and hurriedly explained, "Boss, you should know that your road is too difficult to walk on. I really can't guarantee the safety of your goods." Kinzu didn't get angry when he heard this. Instead, he felt that this guy was honest. He was very clear about the situation of the road after walking on it several times. Turning his head to look at Zumengyo beside him, Kinzu asked uncertainly, "Yo, when you packed, did you put anything fragile in?" Zumengyo shook her head gently, and explained to the driver with a smile, "No fragile things, just some food and clothes, don't worry." The driver was relieved when he heard this, and smiled and said, "Okay, let's go now." At this time, there was no need for the yellow-haired man at the express delivery outlet. The things were quickly loaded and went to the destination. When they arrived at the Kin family, not to mention Kin's father and mother, even the driver of the small truck was shocked beyond words. When did such a powerful rich family appear in our town? After sending the small truck driver away, Kinzu waved to the room. Little sister, come here quickly and help your sister-in-law pack things. The little girl who just heard the sound and came out to see the situation was directly drafted by Kinzu. Fortunately, sorting gifts is also a kind of enjoyment. Kinru didn't have any dissatisfaction. The two women plus the sister and brother-in-law worked for most of the day before they roughly classified the things before the sunset. They wanted to finish everything in one go, but unfortunately, it was already evening and the family was preparing dinner. The sister and the beautiful Zhu put down the things in their hands and ran to help. It is said that good news does not go out, but bad news spreads 1,000 miles. After Kinzu's family moved into the new house, although there were no more people who wanted to work abroad, there was an endless stream of people who borrowed money. Whether it was distant relatives who were not related at all, or neighbors who did not visit often, they were often active in Kinzu's villa recently. Kinzu completely let it go. As long as it was not too much, he would let the old couple decide. Anyway, even if they really didn't plan to pay it back, Kinzu would not ask for it. Just think of it as spending a little money to let parents see the true face of some people. Xiaozu, do you want to play a few rounds? Qinwan, who had just finished lunch and was a little bored, suggested to the beautiful Zhu who was also doing nothing. Kinzu shrugged indifferently, smiled and glanced at Zhu Mengyo, and when she saw her nod slightly, she said, I have no problem here, what about you? I have no problem here, let's go. Qinwan saw that the matter was settled, so she trotted over, took out the mahjong and started to build the Great Wall. Speaking of playing mahjong, there are not many people in China who don't know how to play. Especially when the Chinese New Year comes, as long as there are enough people, basically every household will start the Great Wall War. And those who don't want to play can also play something else. For example, landlord or something. Anyway, when the Chinese New Year comes, everyone has nothing to worry about and having fun is the mainstream. However, after saying so much, Kinzu's attention has never left the card table. There is no way. Although he is killing it in the casino, he is not very good at playing mahjong. Don't move, you've lost again. Qinwan held down Kinzu's hand that was about to take it back, took the 80,000 yuan he was holding in his hand, looked at the three people present with a smile, and stretched out her hand, hurry up and pay, 120 yuan each, hurry up. Just over 100 yuan, it was nothing to the three people. So, the three people looked at each other helplessly, but still took out the money very readily. Xiaozu, come out quickly, someone is looking for you. Looking for me? What are you looking for me for? Kinzu, who had just given the money and was about to make a big move, looked outside with great curiosity. It's just a pity that from this angle, it's still a little unclear what's happening outside. However, Kinzu vaguely saw a few black cars. Little sister, come and bet for me first, if you win, it's yours, and if you lose, it's mine. Inviting the lively little girl next to him to help him, Kinzu got up, tidied his clothes, and walked to the door. Thanks to 1, 3, 6, 6, 5, 2, 9, 1, 6, 1, 5 and Dream of the Brilliant Starry Sky for their rewards, and thanks to Next Second for his 2000 book coins. Chapter 767 Investment. The morning sun shone through the thin mist and spread over the endless fields. Kinzu stretched lazily, carefully moved the beautiful leg that was pressing on him, got out of bed, and walked to the window. Pulling open the curtains made of purple velvet, a lot of mist had gathered on the window glass. It can be seen that the temperature difference between indoors and outdoors is very large. Hey, is it snowing? Looking at the originally green wheat field outside the window, which has now turned into a piece of white, Kinzu couldn't help but talk to himself. Huh? Is it snowing? The beautiful Zhu, who had woken up when Kinzu just got up, wanted to stay in bed for a while, but after hearing what Kinzu said, she put on her pajamas and ran over. Although the temperature outside in winter is a bit unbearable. But after a night of baptism by the air conditioner, the bedroom, which was not very large, suddenly became like spring all year round, and there was no need to worry about being cold. Where is it snowing? You're lying. Zhu Mengyo ran over excitedly, looking at the bright sunshine outside the window, stretched out her white and tender fist, and gently hit Kinzu a few times. Ha ha, I didn't say it was really snowing. Kinzu grabbed the naughty little hand, put it to his mouth and kissed it gently, with a mischievous smile on his face. In fact, the moment the words came out, Kinzu already understood that it was not snowing at all, but just ordinary frost. The layer of white substance in the wheat field was the trace left by the frost. However, if you look at the frost from a distance, you may mistake it for a layer of light snow if you don't pay attention. Since they woke up, the two of them didn't sleep anymore, but played around in the room. Not only that, while there was still some time in the morning, the two guys who had tasted the marrow and tasted it would occasionally kiss each other. Looking at their affectionate appearance, it seemed that they would never get tired of it. Turning over, Zumengyo seemed to suddenly remember something, and couldn't help asking, "By the way, why did those officials come to you yesterday? They didn't want to embarrass you, did they?" "Hey, how do you know they are officials?" Kinzu didn't answer the question of the beautiful Zhu, but looked at her with surprise. If you remembered correctly, they talked about things in the living room downstairs yesterday, and this girl shouldn't have heard it, right? The beautiful Zhu raised her little nose proudly. "Do I need to ask this? Look at the way those guys are dressed, and the car they drove over, plus the village chief is accompanying them, who can't tell except an idiot." Ouch! Before she finished speaking, the beautiful Zhu slapped on her little butt, and she couldn't help but let out a cry of pain. "Why did you hit me?" Twisting her body into satisfaction, Zumengyo turned her head and looked at Kinzu a little aggrieved, not knowing why he hit her. "Dare to call my husband an idiot? Who else should I hit?" Kinzu raised his eyebrows proudly, raised his right hand again, and threatened with a smile. "Will you scold me again in the future?" "No, I won't scold you, isn't it okay?" Helplessly lying on Kinzu's shoulder, the beautiful Zhu opened her mouth, revealing a pair of small tiger teeth, and bit him hard. However, as soon as she exerted force, she quickly let go and blew gently at the place she had just bitten, as if she was afraid of hurting this guy. Seeing this, Kinzu couldn't help but chuckled, lowered his head, found the tempting red lips, and directly imprinted on them. After a long time, until both of them were almost out of breath, they separated. "Why do you want to tell me what they want you for?" Lying on Kinzu, the beautiful Zhu panted slightly, thinking of the question just now, and looked at his eyes with some worry. "My dear, don't worry. If they dare to embarrass you, I will find someone to deal with them." Kinzu was shocked by this sudden domineering declaration. He stroked the beauty's back with a smile and comforted her. "It's nothing, Mengyo, don't worry. With your husband's wealth, who dares to bully me now? Well, you're the best." Although she didn't agree with Kinzu's point of view, Zumengyo still chuckled and agreed. "I thought that just by listening to Kinzu's tone, I knew it must be no big deal. Otherwise, no matter how much money you have, it would be useless. After all, this is not the United States, not a country where officials are the standard. People who have not lived in a country where officials are the standard cannot understand the cowardly mentality of ordinary people when facing officials. In this country where officials are the standard, even if you are just a small village party secretary, you will live a happier life than many famous university students. These guys are the mayor and some minor officials of our town. They came to me to implement the road construction." Kinzu's hands did not stop here, and continued to wander on Zumengyo, but he smiled and teased. "You know what, these officials are really active in attracting investment. How long have I been back? They found me." Zumengyo was resisting someone's invasion while listening to Kinzu. When she heard about the enthusiasm of these guys to attract investment, she smiled bitterly and said, "They are really hard-working." Kinzu also nodded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Yes, in order to get me to invest in the town, they even let me choose the location of the factory." "You refused?" The beautiful Zhu raised her neck and stared at Kinzu quietly. "I don't know why, but I always feel that he is so charming at this time." "Of course." Kinzu shrugged helplessly. "What if I don't refuse? Such a small town, such a small population, what do you want me to invest in? Open a ranch here? Why not?" The beautiful Zhu blinked her big eyes, staring at Kinzu with a smile, as if she could see through people's hearts. "What?" Kinzu was slightly stunned, and then the next moment, he cast his eyes on the beautiful Zhu who was looking at him with a smile. "You mean, we open a ranch? How is that possible? Why is it impossible? There is not such a big place. How many cows can we raise with just our few acres of land? Who said there is no?" Zumengyo stood up, crossed her hands on her chest, and explained with a smile. "Such a large plain, it is too wasteful to just use it as farmland. We just need to convey our intentions, and I believe someone will help you solve everything." This. Kinzu's heart was a little thumping. Although this idea was a bit weird, it would definitely make some people dissatisfied. After all, you are trying to take the land that people depend on for their livelihood, and you can't allow them to complain. However, all of this is still empty talk. He still needs to seriously consider whether it is necessary to open a ranch here. As for the elf Fefade, she has completed her mission and gone to another world. Chapter 768. It's really snowing. Perhaps there is such a person in the world who really has the ability to call the wind and rain. Just in the morning, Kinzu teased Zumengyo that it was snowing outside. As a result, in the afternoon, before it got dark, accompanied by a gust of cold wind, dots of snowflakes fell from the sky. First, it was small snow particles, then it became as big as a little fingernail, and then gradually began to change to heavy snow. Wow, brother, come out and see, it's snowing. Kinzu, who was playing mahjong with his family in the room, looked at the little girl with some doubt. This trick your brother just used this morning, it didn't work on me. Seeing that Kinzu kept staring at her, but didn't mean to get up, the little girl ran over to grab him with some dissatisfaction. If you don't believe me, come out and see for yourself. Helplessly, Kinzu had to wink at the beautiful Zhu and was dragged out of the lounge by his little sister. However, when he just came to the living room, Kinzu was a little stunned. Oh my god, it's really snowing. Kinzu looked at the snow outside the window in astonishment. The snow was getting bigger and bigger, and the snow was falling faster and faster. His brain was a little frozen. Wasn't it sunny in the morning? How come it turned into a blizzard in that blink of an eye? However, for now, this is not the most important thing. Kinzu turned around and ignored his little sister's coquettish voice behind him. He rushed into the lounge directly, and the first sentence was, "It's really snowing outside." A moment later, Kin's father, Kin's mother, Kin Wan, Li Jianhua, and Kin Ru. The family of 7 stood by the window of the living room, looking outside. They kept exclaiming in amazement. It's been several years since we've had such a heavy snowfall, right? Kin's father looked at Kin's mother and sighed. The last time it snowed heavily, we were still living in a small shabby house. When the snow melted, we were so cold that we didn't want to leave the bed. Yes. Kin's mother also nodded with deep emotion, looked around with emotion, and said, "It's so good now. Not only do we have a big house to live in, but the room is also warm as hell." Kinzu didn't hear the old man sigh. He was taking Zudame and Xiaomie together, opened the door of the villa and slipped out. Hiss, it's so cold. As soon as she went out, she was blown by the biting north wind, and Zumengyo couldn't help shivering, feeling as if she had walked into a world made of ice. Yes, it's a bit cold, let's go back. Although Kinzu felt that it was okay, he saw that the 2 women around him looked so fragile, so he had to take them back to the villa. Brother, do you think the snow will keep falling? Kinru was watching TV boredly on the sofa in the living room, but she glanced out the window from time to time. It looks like it won't stop. Kinzu's face was a little helpless. After the initial excitement, he remembered that he had to go to the town tomorrow. However, judging from the current situation, tomorrow's trip can basically be cancelled. Just as he was thinking, the phone rang beside him. It was Kin's father. After answering the phone and whispering a few words, Kin's father hung up the phone, walked a few steps, and sat down on the sofa on the other side of Kinzu. The secretary just called and said that their car was stuck in another village, and tomorrow's meeting will be postponed for the time being. Kinzu breathed a sigh of relief, nodded, and his eyes drifted outside involuntarily. That's perfect, go ahead, even if you keep snowing, I don't mind. Maybe he was deliberately against Kinzu, or maybe he was doing Kinzu a favor. The heavy snow, like goose feathers, gradually stopped the next morning. Look, isn't it beautiful outside? Kinzu pulled the still lazy beauty Zhu up and pointed out the window. Wow, it's really beautiful. Following the direction of Kinzu's finger, the beauty Zhu also saw the scenery outside clearly and couldn't help but let out a cry. The villa occupies a large area. Although it is built in the village, the back door is close to the fields. Therefore, standing in Kinzu's bedroom, you can look directly at the green wheat fields. However, at this time, let alone the wheat fields, even if you grow gold, you have to wait until the snow melts. After getting up and washing up, it was already past 8 o'clock when Kinzu and the others were busy. Uncle, you're sleeping in again. Lady, who hadn't caught Kinzu for a few days, caught Kinzu in the act this time. Lily, you're not being good. Uncle won't play with you when we make a snowman later. What? Lady Lay blinked his eyes, pretending nothing had happened, and ran over to hug Kinzu's thighs. Uncle, you're not lazy. I want to make a snowman. Kinzu moved his legs speechlessly, and found that it was really difficult to move with such a burden. Okay, I'll take you with me later. Helplessly helping the little guy up, Kinzu asked with a smile. Lily, where's Tongton? Why can't I see this girl? Before Lele could speak, he heard a burst of laughter outside the door, and his little sister Kinru ran in chasing Tongton. After seeing Kinzu, Tongton hid behind him without thinking, giggling and saying, "Uncle, my aunt wants to catch me, please save me." Kinzu supported Lily with one hand, and did not rush to greet Tongton, but smiled and said, "Tongton, I can only save one person here. If you don't want to be caught by my aunt, you should go to my aunt." "Aunt?" Tongton was stunned for a moment, then she thought of something and rushed to Zumengyo. "Aunt, it's our first meeting, I'm glad to meet you." Kinzu was stunned, Zumengyo opened her mouth, and even the always steady Kin's father looked at her in surprise. Although she was surprised, Zumengyo's reaction was not slow, and she took out a red envelope from her arms. "Here, Tongton, this is a gift from my aunt." She stuck the red envelope into Tongton's hand with a smile, but the beautiful Zhu glanced at Kinzu. "Okay, come and wash your hands and eat." Mother Kin's voice sounded in time, interrupting the people who were thinking about their own things. "Let's go, Lily, let's go eat." With the force of both hands, Kinzu lifted the little guy up high and walked downstairs with him in his arms. On the other side, Zumengyo, also holding Tongton, followed Kinzu step by step and walked to the living room. The breakfast was very simple. Well, Mother Kin would not make anything too special. Why porridge or noodle soup? Choose one of the two. Although it was simple, everyone ate it very deliciously. Especially the beautiful Zhu, who had never eaten such a simple meal before, and couldn't help but eat an extra bowl. "I'm so full." After eating a simple breakfast, the beautiful Zhu, with her little belly, picked up the tools and followed Kinzu to the rooftop with Kinru and the two little guys. Chapter 769 Smart Tongton. "Aunt, aren't we going to make a snowman?" Tongton followed Zumengyo upstairs like a little follower. However, her little face was now full of doubts. "Yes, let's make a snowman." The beautiful Zhu was also a little confused, but she was smart not to ask. "Anyway, we will know in a while, just follow." Kinzu came to the roof with two older children and two younger children, looking at the white snow above, and asked with a smile, "Look, how about using this side to make a snowman?" The eyes of the few people who end up to the roof lit up, looking at the large piece of white snow like unpolished jade, and they all cheered happily. After all, this is not a ranch. Although the villa is relatively large, the greening is also better. As a result, the snowflakes all fell on the vegetation, and it was impossible to accumulate so much and so clean snow. It was said to be making a snowman, but except for the two little guys Tongton and Lily, the other three started fighting while making snow. Kinzu started the fight first. He took advantage of Kinru's unpreparedness, grabbed some snow, and put it directly into her neck. Kinru shuddered involuntarily, and immediately refused to do it. She grabbed a handful of snow and rushed over. But she could not beat Kinzu alone, so after being suppressed by Kinzu, she pulled her sister-in-law and started the fight again. Zumengyo was watching the two of them playing with a smile on her side, but he knew that she was pulled off the battlefield by her sister-in-law in a blink of an eye. Facing her future sister-in-law, even if she had no interest in her heart, she could only choose to surrender. As soon as the beautiful Zhu joined the battle, she relied on the endless snowballs to make Kinzu retreat step by step. Helplessly, he protested. "Hey, no 2-on-1. Is there?" Kinru blinked her big eyes and asked in confusion. "Didn't we agree to a 1-on-2? Why are you going back on your word?" Being somewhat fooled by his little sister's divine logic, Kinzu had to raise his hands and surrender and said with a wry smile, Okay, let's go down and wash up quickly." "No, uncle, the snowman hasn't been built yet." Before Kinru and Zumengyo could speak, the little girl Tongton protested in dissatisfaction. Kinzu was stunned and looked back at the snowman built by the two little guys. But after looking for a long time, he only saw a half-grown snowball. Well, if they waited until they built the snowman, it would probably be dark. However, he was still good at dealing with children. "Are you sure you don't want to go down?" Kinzu showed a naughty smile on his face, and said in a tempting tone, "We are going to the market later, there are a lot of delicious food there." This. After hearing Kinzu's words, Tongton swallowed her saliva involuntarily. Thinking of the red spicy hot pot and the golden roasted chicken wings at the market, she almost couldn't help but agreed. But turning her head to look at her unfinished masterpiece, Tongton couldn't help but fall into entanglement. After looking at Lily, the two little guys saw hesitation and entanglement in each other's eyes. "Should we go to eat delicious food?" or stay and build our own snowman? Tongton's cute big eyes kept blinking, and suddenly she thought of a good idea and became excited. Approaching Lady, the little girl whispered, "How about you finish building the snowman here, and I'll go to the market with my uncle and bring you some delicious food when I come back, how about that?" Lady's eyes narrowed into slit when he heard this, and he nodded vigorously, indicating that this plan was feasible. Unfortunately, although the little girl thought she had lowered her voice, in fact, not only Qinzu heard it, but also Zumengyu and Qinru heard it. This little girl is really smart. Shaking her head with admiration, Zumengyu smiled again, wanting to see what Qinzu would do now. Qinzu was also a little dumbfounded when he listened to it. "Good guy, this even involves splitting up." Ahem. After coughing twice, Qinzu explained with a smile after attracting the attention of the two little guys. "Two little guys, you can't bring food back from the town, otherwise it won't taste good when it gets cold." "Ah, then I'll go too." When he heard that he might not have anything to eat, the alliance that had just been established collapsed instantly. Helplessly, Tongton had to follow the others downstairs, looking back every step of the way. Seeing Qinzu coming down, Qin's mother also came out of the kitchen and asked with a smile, "Xiaozu, are you going to the market later?" Qinzu was stunned, picked up the towel beside him and wiped his face casually, and asked with a smile, "What's wrong? Is there anything else you need to buy?" Qin's mother nodded, took out a list from her pocket and handed it over. "Not much, just buy according to this." Qinzu opened the list and saw the densely packed, more than 10 kinds of things that needed to be bought. He was dumbfounded. "No way. It's almost the new year, and our family is still missing so many things." Qinzu couldn't help it, raised the list in his hand, and looked at Qin's mother with surprise. "Yes." Mother Qin sighed and explained helplessly, "It's because we moved in a hurry. We just moved in before you came back. How could we have time to prepare for the new year?" "Okay." Qinzu scratched his head. "It's almost the new year, but the family hasn't prepared anything. It's really too much. Fortunately, there are many people in the family. Dad and brother-in-law have already gone their separate ways, and the rest is left to Qinzu. There is no way, who let the car be driven by this guy?" In this regard, Qinzu could only remain silent, but he had an idea in his heart. "Mom, I'll buy a car for Dad. It's convenient to go in and out when living here. Buy a car. Buy a car." The two different voices of Qin's mother and little sister sounded at the same time, which made Qinzu look sideways. "Isn't it just buying a car? Do you have to be so excited? Brother, are you going to buy a car for Dad? What brand are you going to buy?" Qinzu nodded, and just when he was about to speak, he heard his mother nagging on the side. "Why buy a car? Jianhua only needs one car. Wouldn't it be a waste to buy him a car?" Qinru was anxious when she heard what her mother said. She was about to argue, but was glared at by her mother. Well, I listened to my mother." Helplessly, the little girl had to agree with her mother's opinion. Qinzu didn't take it seriously. He just asked casually. As for his mother's answer, it was already within his expectations. After all, his mother has been thrifty all her life. If he wants her to agree to spend money on a car now, it would be better to buy that car directly and do it first and then ask for permission. Chapter 770 Lunar New Year. It is said that auspicious snow indicates a good harvest. The weather in the past few days indicates that this year will definitely be a good year. Since the snow began to fall, it has been sporadic until now. Several days have passed, but it does not seem to stop at all. Although, sometimes the snow is very small, so small that you don't know it has snowed if you don't feel it carefully. But sometimes, it can be said to be a heavy snow, which makes him a little worried. Will there be another snowstorm this year? But his worry is obviously unnecessary. Until the Lunar New Year came in this intermittent snowfall, he still didn't hear about any snowstorms. Early in the morning of this day, Qinzu was awakened by a violent knock on the door. "Xiaozu, get up quickly, there are still many things waiting for you to do today." "I know, I'll come right away." Yawning, Qinzu lifted the quilt and quickly put on his clothes. "Little baby, get up quickly, you can't sleep in today." "Honey, what time is it?" Qinzu looked at his watch and replied with a smile. "It's not even 7 o'clock, but today is New Year's Eve, you can't sleep in." As he was talking, Tongton, who had two beautiful ponytails, trotted in through the door. "Uncle, get up quickly, Grandpa asked you to post the couplets." Qinzu ignored the little guy, but after getting Zumengyo up, he turned around and looked at her, smiling and asked, Then Tongton, did Grandpa ask you to come along? Yes, Uncle, come down quickly. After saying that, little Tongton ran out with a serious face. When Kinzu and the others went downstairs, the large living room was already very lively. There were two little guys in the sister's family alone, and they seemed to be very energetic, running around in the living room. At this time, his younger sister Kinru was also helping to clean up. Seeing her serious look, it was hard to imagine what she looked like when she was naughty. Xiaozu is here, come here quickly. Kinzu was called over by his father as soon as he came downstairs. Look, how about this calligraphy? When he got closer, Kinzu realized that his father was referring to a couplet. Moreover, it looked like it was written directly on it, and the writing style was simply done in one go. What is this? Who wrote it? Kinzu looked through this year's couplet and asked curiously. Written by Mr. Zing from the village, isn't the calligraphy good? Kinzu nodded repeatedly, made an exaggerated expression, and praised without hesitation. So it was Uncle Zing's calligraphy, no wonder it's so beautiful. When Mr. Qin heard this, the smile on his face really became even bigger. Seeing this, Kinzu couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth, revealing a barely perceptible smile. Okay, take these away, and start pasting. Qin's father waved his hand to stop his son's flattery and sent Kinzu to work. Holding the cut couplets, Kinzu called Zumengyo beside him and said with a smile, Yo-yo, go put on your dirty clothes quickly, otherwise your new clothes will be dirty. Zumengyo went upstairs obediently, and soon, she found someone's torn clothes and came down wearing them. Kinzu didn't care, and motioned her to follow him. The two of them started to get busy together. When working, Kinzu realized the disadvantage of moving to a new house. That is, the place is too big. The larger the place, the more places need to be pasted, one door, one window. When Kinzu was sweating profusely and finished pasting the couplets, it was almost noon. Brother, are you hungry? How about something to fill your stomach? The little sister came over with a bag of snacks and looked at Kinzu with a smile. It's not a big deal if it's not mentioned. But when it comes to eating, Kinzu's stomach starts to protest. Alas, I could have gotten away with it, but you tempted me with food, so I ate an extra bowl of rice. What does it look like to be a good kid after getting something for nothing? Just look at how Kindakyazu is now and you'll understand. After playing and laughing with his family for a while, lunch began. In the afternoon, time became much more abundant. Zumengyo, Kinru, and Kinwan helped Kin's mother in the kitchen. Dad, what are you thinking about? Bored, Kinzu, Kin's father, and Li Jianhua sat on the sofa in the living room and chatted. And Kinzu, of course, thought of what he had discussed with his father a few days ago, and couldn't help asking. This, I haven't chosen it yet. Kin's father touched his head awkwardly. He also felt that he was a little slow, but he couldn't make up his mind. It's okay. After the new year, I'll go with you to the car dealership and take your time to choose. Li Jianhua waved his hand, indicating that he would take care of it. He would definitely help his father-in-law pick a good car. Okay, don't delay too long. Bring the car back early and let's all try it. At this point, Kinzu didn't say anything else. Instead, he looked at Li Jianhua and said with a smile, Brother-in-law, how were you thinking about the new store? Open it as a chain. Li Jianhua frowned slightly, obviously a little entangled in his heart, but he didn't know what to say. Kinzu nodded slightly, yes, open it as a chain, just like my place in the United States. Oh? Li Jianhua immediately became energetic and asked hurriedly, Xiaozu, did you expand your restaurant in the United States? Or did you join a franchise? Kinzu smiled and shook his head. Neither. Neither? Li Jianhua swallowed his saliva and asked uncertainly, built it yourself? Kinzu still shook his head, but this time he didn't tease them and directly told them about his investment in the United States. Although there are only 2 stores under the catering group at present. But with these 2 restaurants, no one dares to underestimate him. Apart from anything else, there are only so many Michelin 3-star restaurants in the world, and each one is very important. The 3 of them just sat in the living room, brewed a pot of kung fu tea, and chatted while drinking. As for other things, anything else? The chat lasted until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it had to be interrupted. Because Kin's mother announced that she would start preparing dinner. No way. So early. The beautiful Zhu looked at the time, rubbed her belly, and said distressedly, I'm going to get fat if I eat like this every day. Kinzu heard this and smiled and teased, it's better to be fatter. If you're too thin, it will be uncomfortable to hug you. Her, who asked you to hug me? Angered by Kinzu's words, Zumengyo snorted and broke free directly, going to the kitchen to help. Chapter 771 New Year's Money. After a sumptuous reunion dinner, the family sat on the sofa in the living room, drinking tea to digest the food while waiting to watch TV. Although the New Year's Eve party was getting more and more disappointing, if I didn't watch it, I always felt that something was missing. Brother, Happy New Year, and congratulations on your prosperity. Before the New Year's Eve party started, the little sister Kinru came to Kinzu's side, holding one of his arms and shaking, and said blessings with a smile. Although he knew that she wanted the New Year's money, Kinzu still pretended to know nothing and looked at her with a smile. Well, little sister is really good, Happy New Year. Kinru blinked her big eyes, still with a smile on her face, waiting for Kinzu's next expression. But after waiting for a while, she saw that her stinky brother actually turned his head to watch TV again. Now, the smiling look on the little girl's face suddenly solidified. Then what? Pouting her little mouth, the little girl stared at Kinzu angrily. What then? Kinzu turned his head with a confused look on his face, and looked at the little girl with a puzzled look, as if asking her if there was anything else. The little girl was so angry, but she was too embarrassed to say it out loud, so she could only snort coldly, let go of Kinzu's arm, and sat alone beside him to sulk. You just know how to make trouble. Seeing that the little girl was angry, the beautiful Zhu who was sitting on the other side pinched Kinzu hard, and then quickly got up and sat over. Little sister, don't pay attention to your brother, that bad guy. Here, this is the New Year's money I gave you. Taking out a big red envelope from her pocket, Zumengyo handed it over with a smile. However, facing the future sister-in-law, the beautiful Zhu still didn't dare to call herself sister-in-law. Kinru didn't care about this. After seeing the red envelope, she couldn't wait to take it, and then gave the beautiful Zhu a brilliant smiling return. Thank you, sister-in-law, you are so nice. Kinzu, who was standing by, saw this and didn't care that he was teasing the little girl just now, and came over with a smile. What? Your sister-in-law is nice, but I am not. Kinzu originally thought that no matter what the little girl did, she would still get angry with him. Unexpectedly, facing this back brother who was just teasing her, Kinru showed a sweet smile. Brother is also very nice. Something is wrong. Kinzu's first reaction was that this girl was not right. It was not her style to not get angry after being teased. Shrinking his neck, Kinzu looked at her with a vigilant look, and said suspiciously, Little girl, what do you want to do? Just say it. Kinru didn't care about her brother's vigilant look. She sat over again with a smile, shaking his arm in a coquettish way. Brother, how can you say that to me? I just think you and Sister Mengyo are very good. Sister Mengyo? Kinzu looked at the little girl beside him with a frown, and said unhappily, What Sister Mengyo? Call me sister-in-law. No, no. Kinru winked at Zumengyo, but said in her little mouth, Brother, you haven't married yet, so she is my sister Mengyo now, and when you get married, she will be my sister-in-law. Kinzu was speechless. However, looking at the little girl's smug look, Kinzu couldn't help scratching his head again. Just when he was about to say something, he felt a dull pain in his waist, so he quickly changed his mind and raised his hands in surrender. Okay, whatever you say, just watch TV. After a pause, seeing that the little girl's hand was still raised, he couldn't help asking, What else are you doing? Kinru pretended to be very aggrieved, pursed her lips, stretched out a white and tender little hand, looked at him with pitiful eyes, and said, New Year's money, Sister Mengyo has given me New Year's money, as my brother, don't you plan to give me a red envelope? Kinzu was a little stunned when he heard it. It seems that this girl is waiting for him here. No, didn't your sister-in-law give it to you just now? Kinzu defended weakly. I gave it to you, but it was given by Sister Mengyo, and it has nothing to do with you. The little girl was very satisfied with her brother's expression. After winking at Zumengyo, the little girl pretended to look at Kinzu innocently. Brother, you don't really want to give me New Year's money, do you? Kinzu rolled his eyes and didn't want to say anything more. As for the beautiful Zhu who was laughing beside him, he could only wait until the evening to deal with him. He got up and went upstairs. Kinzu found the empty red envelope, and took some from the newly exchanged stack of Mao Zedong's portraits and put them in the red envelope, and then walked down leisurely. Here, take it, you clever ghost. Kinzu nodded the little girl's head and handed the red envelope to her unhappily. Kinru was not polite either. The aggrieved expression on her face had long disappeared. She took the red envelope with flying eyebrows and opened it directly in front of Kinzu. 100. 200, 500, 1000. The more the little girl counted, the brighter the smile on her face was. Finally, she giggled and raised the Mao Zedong's portrait in her hand to Kin's father and mother, saying, "Dad, Mom, look, I beat the local tyrants. It's a full 1,000 yuan." Her excitement was also justified. You know, a year ago, the most she received as New Year's money was no more than 100 yuan. But now, the amount given by Kinzu alone has increased tenfold. Kin's father and mother just watched with a smile on their son and daughter's playfulness, just as a condiment before the show started. Moreover, the old couple didn't say anything about the New Year's money in their little daughter's hand. Even Kin's mother, who has always been frugal, didn't say anything about keeping it for her. Because even they prepared a big red envelope for their little daughter. But before they could say anything, Kin Wan, who had been watching the fun, spoke at this time. "Come, Shaudra, this is the New Year's money from your sister." Kin Wan took out a big red envelope from her arms and handed it over with a smile. If you want to say who in the whole family is the most comfortable except Kinzu, it must be Kin Wan. Parents have always been in good health, have a husband who loves them, and 2 lively and cute children, and live a relatively rich life. What else is there to be dissatisfied about? Just a few months ago, she was happy but not happy. Because she had to go to get out of class every day and stay up late to prepare for class. After a semester, she was almost a different person. But just when she was about to give up, her brother came back. With a suffocating momentum. First the house, then the career. The 2 most important problems of a family were solved by him so easily. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en esfuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 772 The little girl who was blotted. Time passed quickly with lots of fun and laughter. As expected, this year's New Year's Eve party was as boring as ever. I wanted to go to bed after watching the beginning. But if I didn't watch it, I felt something was missing. Anyway, it was still early, so the few of them discussed and moved the card table to the living room, and built a great wall in front of the TV. Mother Qin and Father Qin each had their own family, Sister Qinwan had her own family, and Zhu Mengye was also pushed out by Qinzu to be counted as a family. As for brother-in-law and himself, they became loyal spectators on the side. Of course, it is still necessary to give some advice from time to time. Originally, according to this configuration, Zhu Mengye and her sister's families would never lose money. But the fact is that after just a few rounds, half of the money in front of Zhu Mengye and Sister Qinwan had disappeared. I say, little girl, if you come over again, I will confiscate your New Year's money. Kinzu looked at Kinru with some humiliation and anger. This dead girl. Just now, they almost made a big profit, but who knew that the little spy leaked the news without paying attention? HMPH, I'm already hiding, I'm not afraid of you. Kinru, who had just received a lot of New Year's money, raised her little nose proudly, and made faces at her brother, not scared by him at all. Little sister, if you tell on me again, be careful that I will punish you later. Seeing Kinru's smug smile, Qinwan, who had just lost money, couldn't help but threaten her. Maybe it's because the eldest sister is like a mother, or because the age difference is a bit big, there is a generation gap between the 2. When she was young, Kinzu always bullied her and even beat her, but when she grew up, Kinru preferred to stick to her brother. But Kinru always felt a little scared of her sister who loved her since she was a child. Seeing her elder sister speak, the little girl couldn't help but pout in grievance, ran to Kin's mother, shook her arm and said coquettishly, "Mom, look at my brother and sister, they are bullying me." Kin's mother smiled happily, and had no intention of intervening. Instead, she encouraged, "Don't be afraid, they dare not do anything to you, go and help Mom see what they need." Now, Kinru was confident. Just now, she took the initiative to help her mother to find out the news, and she was still a little unconfident in her heart. But this time, she was assigned by her mother to find out the news, and she was very confident in her heart. Just as if she had received the Empress Dowager's decree, she held her head high and moved towards Qinwan. And just when she was about to move closer to her sister with a proud look on her face, something unexpected happened. "Jianhua, come and help me play 2 rounds." Kinwan pulled her husband over to play cards for her, and she took advantage of Kinru's daze and rushed over directly. Ah. Sister, I was wrong. It was not until Kinwan fell in front of her that the little girl finally reacted. She screamed and ran away to the small living room. You dead girl, stop right there, I'll punish you. Kinwan followed behind her, rolling up her sleeves and saying angrily, Mom, help me, my sister wants to beat me up. After running around the small living room, the little girl ran back here and started chasing and playing around the table. Facing the little girl's cry for help, Kin's mother turned a deaf ear to her. After looking at her with a smile, she continued to draw cards. When she turned over the cards in her hand, the smiling look on Kin's mother's face immediately turned into a hearty laugh. Ha ha, it's a win, a self-drawn all the same color, pay quickly. The other three people at the table also paid with smiles on their faces, not at all frustrated by losing. On the contrary, Kinzu, looking at the little girl running around being chased by her sister, had his mouth almost stretched to her ears. You damn girl, I let you show off and let you be clever, let's see if you dare to do it again in the future. No, I dare, ha ha, sister, ha ha, I really don't dare. Facing Kinwan's pursuit, Kinru had better not escape. She was pressed on a big sofa by her sister and tickled hard. Don't dare. Why don't I believe it? Hearing the little sister begging for mercy, Kinwan's hands did not relax at all, and the speed of tickling became faster. Ha ha, sister, dear sister, I really don't dare. Kinru, who was out of breath from laughing, could only beg bigly. Once she fell into her sister's hands, she had no power to fight back. Well, this is a truth that has been proven through countless practices. So, where did you put your New Year's money? How were you going to spend it? At this time, Kinwan showed her true fangs and asked with a sly smile. It's in the bedside table. I'm going to buy a computer. The little girl, whose brain was a little messy, blurted out her thoughts. The moment she said this, she figured out her sister's purpose and quickly raised her hands in surrender. Sister, I give up. Can I let my mother keep my New Year's money for me? Sure enough, as soon as she said this, Kinwan's movements immediately slowed down. Well, little sister is really good, worthy of being my good sister. Kinru felt the movement on her body weakened, and took the opportunity to turn over and escape from her sister's control. She rolled her eyes helplessly and muttered, If you don't want me to take the New Year's money, just say it directly, and you still use this trick, sister, don't let me catch the opportunity. Well? Kinwan heard it, and a sly smile suddenly appeared on her face, and raised her hands as if she was ready to pounce. What? Not convinced? Come on, I still have a lot of tricks here. Ah. I am convinced, sister, I am really convinced. Frightened by Kinwan, Kinru screamed and ran away, as if she ran slower, her sister would pounce on her again. Seeing that the little sister ran away, Kinwan did not chase her anymore, but walked slowly towards this side. The reason why Kinwan teased the little girl like this was that she actually wanted the girl to hand over the New Year's money on her own initiative. It's not that she didn't want to give her money, but she didn't want this girl to hold so much money in her hands. At the beginning, no one thought too much about it. They just thought that since they had money this year, they would give more to the little sister. What happened? Kin's father gave 1,000, she gave 1,000, and Kinzu also gave 1,000. That's not all. The little girl extorted another 1,000 from Kinzu. A teenage girl already had 4,000 yuan in her hand. Originally, it was nothing. It was just a few thousand yuan. It was nothing even if she spent it. The scary thing was that the little girl would run out and spend it recklessly with so much money. Money is a small matter. The key is that the little girl would spend the money recklessly. It would be bad if she learned bad things. Chapter 773 Happy New Year. The little girl, who was conspired by several people, honestly handed over all the New Year's money she had just received, which was not even warm yet, to Kin's mother for safekeeping. Seeing the little girl's reluctant look, Kinzu thought for a while and said with a smile, Mom, leave 1,000 for my little sister. It's New Year's Day, let the little girl go and have a good gathering with her classmates. Hearing her brother's words, Kinru's slight dissatisfaction was immediately thrown out of the window. Looking up, the little girl looked at her mother with hopeful eyes, hoping that she would be kind enough to leave some for herself. Kin's mother thought for a while, frowned and said, Why does a child need so much money? 100 is enough for her. Ah? 100? Kinru was a little tearful, as she had more than 4,000 in her hand just now. Kinzu smiled, counted out 1,000 and handed it over. Okay, Mom, my little sister is going to the United States with me after the Chinese New Year. I'll go and have a good reunion with my good classmates these days. I guess we'll meet again next year during the Chinese New Year. Looking at the money Qinzhu handed over, Qinru did not take it directly, but looked at her mother, wanting to see what she would say. After hearing what Qinzhu said, Qin's mother nodded in agreement. Okay, then give her 1,000. As she said that, Qin's mother pushed Qinzhu's hand away, picked a red envelope from the New Year's money that had just been confiscated and handed it to the little girl. Xiaoru, I'll give you 1,000 first. If it's really not enough, you can ask me for more, but you have to remember, don't spend it carelessly. The joy of regaining what she had lost made the little girl nod her head hurriedly. As for what was careless spending, it was no longer within her consideration. After sending the little girl away, they played mahjong in the living room while watching the New Year's Eve party, preparing to wait until the countdown to the New Year was over before going to bed. Time passed quickly, and as the hands turned around and around, they soon pointed to 12 o'clock. Ding, ding, ding. As the countdown on the TV returned to 0, the New Year's bell rang, and Qin's father also walked out of the villa and lit the firecrackers that had been prepared long ago. Crack, crack. The crackling sound of firecrackers had just fallen, and Qinru, the little girl, lit the fireworks on the side. Bang, bang, bang. One after another, the fireworks, flashing with colorful lights, continued to rush into the sky. They were like fearless warriors, knowing that they would be blown to pieces, but still rushed forward without hesitation. The continuous sound of firecrackers and fireworks, crackling non-stop, directly woke up Tonton and Lily, who had fallen asleep early in the morning. Rubbing their sleepy eyes, the two little guys looked very dazed in the arms of their parents. Qinwan took them downstairs and out of the villa until the two little guys were dressed. The moment they walked out, another brilliant flame shot up into the sky. The colorful appearance and the deafening noise made the two little guys extremely excited. Qin's father and mother stood quietly at the door, silently watching the guys making trouble in the yard. Thinking back to the past, oh no, just this time last year, their family was still nestled in a small house, and every time there was a festival, they could only watch others set off fireworks to celebrate. But now, everything is different. Although only half a year has passed, everything in the family has changed in this half year. The small house is gone, and it has become a small manor covering an area of 3 or 4 acres. There is no need to watch others set off fireworks every time there is a festival. His son bought a whole car of fireworks and waited to play with them in the evening. Fireworks continued to rise into the sky, flashing various colors, shining on the people around them, appearing so dazzling. Qin's father and his mother looked at the people in the yard, their hearts filled with a feeling called satisfaction. Since the early morning bell rang, the sound of firecrackers outside has never stopped, and it has been crackling non-stop. Some people sleep late and remember to set off firecrackers after 1 o'clock. The other type is early risers. At 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, they start to set off firecrackers to welcome the arrival of the new year. Anyway, Qinzhu didn't sleep well that night. Not only that, early the next morning, the two little guys ran into his room, chirping non-stop. Until Qinzhu really had no choice but to continue pretending to sleep. I say, Lily, aren't you sleepy? After waking up from his confusion, Qinzhu's first sentence made the little guy shake his head. I'm not sleepy, Uncle. You should get up quickly too. Grandpa said that there will be guests coming soon. Guests? Qinzhu shook his head. He didn't go to bed until after 3 o'clock last night. He got up early in the morning and was really confused. He got out of bed and went to the bathroom to wash up. Qinzhu regained his normal thinking. They were called guests, but they were actually the villagers who came to pay New Year's greetings to their family. In their area, there is a custom of running to pay New Year's greetings. Every year on the morning of the first day of the Lunar New Year, men, including boys of 8 or 9 years old, run in groups from the east end of the village to the west end, or from the west end to the east end. The adults are in front, and the children follow behind, paying New Year's greetings to every household. The leaders are mostly the older young people among the younger generations. This kind of New Year's greeting is just a visit to greet each other, and there is no tea or sitting down. The host gives each person a cigarette as a favor. Even if the men of the host's family visit relatives, they have to take out 1 or 2 packs of cigarettes and put them outside for the guests at home to take out and pass to the guests. After a round of running, the hands and pockets of the people who came to pay New Year's greetings were full of loose cigarettes, and even their ears were not empty, with 2 cigarettes clamped in them. Some thoughtful people even brought empty cigarette boxes. Otherwise, the tobacco at both ends of the cigarettes in their pockets would fall out. Of course, this was the treatment for adults, and the children would naturally be treated with candies and snacks. Kinzu remembered that when he was a child, when he followed his father to pay New Year's greetings, he would often choose clothes with many pockets. Because in this way, he could put more candies. After returning from the New Year's greetings, several friends would often get together and take out the candies they received to compare and see who had more. The most impressive time for Kinzu was when there was a friend in the same village. Everyone wore clothes with big pockets, and when they went out to pay New Year's greetings together, he wore clothes without pockets. Just when several of his friends were talking and laughing at him for having no pockets, this guy took out a plastic bag and put the candies directly into it after grabbing them. At the time, when this guy took out the pocket, the whole audience was stunned. Even the adults looked at each other, not knowing what to say. In the end, it was his dad who looked at the strange looks from others and walked over to confiscate his pocket. As a result, this guy still didn't know how to live or die and made trouble with his old man. Now, his old man felt embarrassed and dragged him back directly. Finally, Kinzu seemed to remember that he hadn't seen this guy go out for several days. Thinking of this, Kinzu looked at the two little guys in the room with a sly smile on his face. Lily, go and prepare 2 plastic bags. Your uncle will take you to pay New Year's greetings later. Chapter 774. The unfair son-in-law arrives. After the Lunar New Year, Kinzu was no longer as leisurely as he was before the New Year. Except for the first day of the New Year, when he rested for an afternoon after visiting the New Year, he spent the rest of the time busy. Well, or rather, he spent the rest of the time eating and drinking. During the New Year, visiting relatives and friends is inevitable. In fact, if you really count, Kinzu's real relatives are only an uncle on his father's side and an uncle on his mother's side. Moreover, even these 2 relatives are far away, and the number of visits each year is limited. But even so, you can't resist them taking the initiative to get close to you. Today, a cousin comes here, tomorrow, a cousin comes there, and the day after tomorrow, a cousin's uncle comes there. After only persisting at home for a week, on the 8th day of the Lunar New Year, Kinzu couldn't stand it anymore, packed up his things, and went to the capital with the beautiful Zhu. He felt that even if he went to face his mother-in-law, it would be better than being a monkey for others at home every day, right? But after just one day, he regretted it a little. Wife, do you think my father-in-law will kick me out? Kinzu said anxiously when the plane landed at Beijing Airport and he led Zhu Mengyu out of the terminal. He really regretted it now. Why was he so impulsive? Although it was a bit unpleasant to be watched by others at home, it was better than having a son-in-law come to the door, right? Haha, are you still afraid? Looking at the tangled expression on Kinzu's face, the beautiful Zhu beside him laughed heartlessly, and she was very happy. Pa. Kinzu seized the opportunity and put his dirty hand on the plump and perky one. Ah, what are you doing? Being suddenly attacked in public, the beautiful Zhu was immediately embarrassed, and her delicate hand was directly twisted on the big hand that had not been retracted in time. Kinzu didn't care about the little hand twisting on his arm. Instead, he felt a sense of enjoyment and a bright smile appeared on his face. However, thinking about the situation he would face soon, the smile that had just risen on his face quickly disappeared. Hey, yo, you said I shouldn't be kicked out, right? Yeah, definitely not. Zhu Mengyu just smiled lightly, and she felt sweet in her heart for Kinzu's performance. After all, only when you really care about someone will you feel nervous, right? Because Zhu Mengyu did not inform others when she came back this time, no one came to pick her up at the airport. After leaving the airport, the two took a taxi directly and rushed to a villa area in Xiangshan. The taxi stopped at the gate of the community, and Kinzu couldn't take his eyes off it before getting off. This is simply, somewhat mechanically, Kinzu paid the fare, and got off the car with the beautiful Zhu. Looking at the row of armed guards in the booth in front of them, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva secretly. Isn't this a bit exaggerated? It's okay. Zhu Mengyu smiled lightly, and without saying anything more, she urged. Let's go quickly. If you go too late, Mom and the others may have already eaten. Oh, okay. Okay. After registering at the gate, the beautiful Zhu took Kinzu's arm and walked towards the villa area. The villa area is very large, which Kinzu already knew in the taxi. But after walking in, he found that he had underestimated its area. Because all the villas here are single-family villas, and the distance between them is very far. This can not only guarantee the personal privacy of the villa owner, but also make everyone live more comfortably. However, in this way, the price paid is a bit high. This is Beijing. Moreover, this place is one of the most expensive villa communities in Beijing. The green areas are all money. However, thinking about the people who live here and the armed security guard at the door, Qin Zhu couldn't help but feel relieved. Who would care about those things if they can live here? While Qin Zhu was still thinking about it, Zhu Mengyo had stopped in front of a 3-story building. Dingling, dingling. The doorbell rang twice, and a middle-aged woman in her 50s with a somewhat wealthy appearance walked out of the villa. When she came to the door and saw the situation outside clearly, a look of surprise suddenly appeared on her face. Miss. But before she could continue speaking, Qin Zhu had already interrupted her. Hello, auntie, I'm Mengyo's boyfriend. Please forgive me for disturbing you. The middle-aged woman was not angry when she was interrupted. After listening to Qin Zhu's words, she looked Qin Zhu up and down and said with a smile, "This is the son-in-law, please come in. I'm the nanny here. You can just call me Aunt Home." What son-in-law? My mother hasn't agreed yet. After hearing Aunt Home's words, a few blushes appeared on the face of the beautiful Zhu, and she stomped her feet and acted coquettishly. Listening to the conversation between the two, Qin Zhu almost wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. It's over, this is embarrassing. Fortunately, the nanny named Hong Ye is very competent. After a few words of greeting at the door, she welcomed the 2 inches. Following Hong Ye, the beautiful Zhu turned her head and stared at Qin Zhu intently, and from time to time she looked at Qin Zhu infatuatedly, as if there was a flower on his face. Why do you always look at me like this? Qin Zhu felt a little uncomfortable being looked at, so he turned his body and asked curiously. Because you were cute. The beautiful Zhu's answer was very direct and straightforward, which made Qin Zhu, who was always thick-skinned, feel a little ashamed. The villa was not too far from the gate. After walking a few steps, they had already reached the door. Pushing open the antique door, the 3 of them changed their shoes at the door, and then walked in one by one. It's funny to say that when Qin Zhu was in the United States, he never changed his shoes when he entered the house. But since coming to China, whether it is my sister's house or this house, I have to change into a pair of clean slips before entering the door. Perhaps, this is the difference between my own home and others' homes? Qin Zhu pondered secretly. Our home, who's here? Just after changing into slippers, before I had time to go in, I heard a very pleasant voice from inside. Madam, it's the young lady who is back. Aunt Home heard the words, walked over quickly, and said loudly with a smile. Oh? Yo-yo is back. Hearing Aunt Home say that her daughter was back, a middle-aged beautiful woman who was sitting steadily on the sofa in the living room stood up involuntarily. Turning a corner, the 3 of them walked into the living room. When the beautiful Zhu saw the middle-aged beautiful woman in bright clothes standing in front of the sofa, her eyes were a little red. Mom, I'm back. After calling out emotionally, the beautiful Zhu rushed directly towards her. Chapter 775. Trip to the capital. It snowed a lot last night. When Qin Zhu got up in the morning, he opened the window to see a snowy scene. On the streets, on the roofs, and on the branches used for greening, everything was white and crystal-like. After cleaning up, Qin Zhu sat on the soft leather sofa in the living room, staring at the teacup in front of him that was still emitting misty heat. This is an ordinary villa area in Beijing. Although it is a bit far from the 3rd Ring Road, the location is not too remote. Moreover, this villa belongs to Zhu Mengyo. It was a gift from an elder on her 18th birthday. As for which relative? Sorry, she said she didn't remember it very well. Maybe, this is the corrupt life of those rich children. Qin Zhu sighed deeply and lay on his back on the sofa, letting his eyes look around weakly. He didn't know whether this trip to Beijing was a success or a failure. Anyway, the middle-aged beautiful mother of the beautiful Zhu had a very good impression on him. It was a pity that Zhu Daimaren's father and a group of relatives were busy with some documents that had been accumulated during the Chinese New Year. It was at this time that Qin Zhu finally realized that he had come at the wrong time. Because the day was the 10th day of the first lunar month, many units started working on that day. And it happened that, except for Zhu Daimaren's family, basically everyone was either working in the unit or in the government department. These days were their busiest time, so how could they have time to come and see Qin Zhu? It was also from this point that Qin Zhu could clearly feel the status of Zhu Daimaren in his family. Therefore, after waiting for a day and having dinner, Qin Zhu took Zhu Daimaren out. Why don't you stay at home for a few days? Marin was still a little unhappy that her lover didn't want to stay at her home overnight. Kinzu smiled, pinched her pink little nose, and explained, "Your father doesn't even know me yet. I'm such a big man, and I live with you two directly. How bad will it be if it gets out?" After hearing this, Zumengyo felt that it seemed to make some sense. So, sweeping away the previous unhappiness, the beautiful Zhu took Kinzu and walked to the door of the villa. There, a cool blue Porsche Cayenne had been waiting for a long time. "You dead girl, you didn't say you would come to find me when you came. Now you have no car, so you asked me to come here to be the driver, right?" In the blue Cayenne, Surui looked at the two people after they got in the car and couldn't help but tease them. Zumengyo looked at Kinzu a little embarrassedly, then hugged one of Surui's arms, and shook her with a smile. "No way, didn't I call you? How about we have a party tonight?" "TSK, I won't do it." Surui curled her lips in disdain and said with contempt, "Damn you have a man to comfort you now, and you come here to show off, right?" "I am showing off. If you have the ability, you can find one too." Contrary to her usual behavior, the beautiful Zhu hugged Kinzu's arm, and her happy look really made Surui angry. "You damned girl, wait till we get back and see how I'll deal with you." After saying this harsh word, Surui accelerated, and the dazzling blue Porsche Cayenne kept shuttling through the evening traffic. "Oh, I'm so confused." His thoughts flashed through his mind, and Kinzu picked up the teacup in front of him, took a sip gently, but he couldn't smell the tea fragrance at all. You should taste the tea slowly. How can you chew the peony like a cow?" The beautiful Zhu, wearing a bathrobe, wiped her wet long hair while sitting down in front of the sofa. "Husband, help me wipe my hair." Kinzu came back to his senses, took the towel with a smile, and wiped the beautiful woman's hair with both hands very skillfully, sighing helplessly. "Wife, when will your father have time? I can't waste every day with him here, right?" This. Speaking of her father, the beautiful Zhu couldn't help but frown her beautiful little eyebrows. "If it doesn't work, we won't meet that guy." After thinking it over again and again, Zumengyo said angrily, "How is it possible?" Kinzu smiled and put his arms around the beautiful woman's waist, and his old face rubbed gently on the beautiful woman's delicate little face. "He has kidnapped her daughter. If I don't come back to apologize, he will probably go to the United States directly. How is it possible? Just him." The beautiful Zhu curled her lips in disdain and said with certainty, "Unless something happens to me again, or I am really bullied by others, under normal circumstances, he will not care about my life." Kinzu heard this and did not speak, but just gently held the beautiful woman in his arms. Perhaps, this is the life in the courtyard of a wealthy family. Kinzu sighed again. He himself also found that since he followed the beautiful Zhu to the capital, he has become sentimental. Is it really influenced by this ancient cultural capital? Thinking of this, Kinzu couldn't help laughing. Maybe it was because she thought of Kinzu and her daughter. Or maybe it was the urging of Zhu Marin's mother Umafang that worked. In short, on the night before the 15th day of the first lunar month, Zhu Marin received a call from home, and the two of them rushed to Xiangshan again. This time, the two did not take a taxi. Because Zhu Marin directly snatched Surui's bright blue Porsche Cayenne and used it as a means of transportation for the past few days. In response, Surui fought with Zhu Marin in the bedroom for several rounds, and in the end, Zhu Marin won. As for how she won, Kinzu didn't know. However, when using Surui's car to send her home, Kinzu could always hear the girl mumbling there. "She's still cheating, damn you actually dared to cheat, I must get revenge." Thinking back to the present, Kinzu drove the bright blue Porsche Cayenne and parked it directly at the gate of the villa area. After the security guards had carefully checked them, they issued him a temporary pass and let the two of them in. The car soon arrived at the gate of the villa. The big iron gate at the gate of the villa was already open. Behind that big iron gate, a stretched version of the red flag sedan was parked. In addition to this dazzling red flag, there were a few young men standing in the yard, who were obviously bodyguards. "What are you doing?" Seeing the Porsche trying to drive in, a man immediately came out and stopped the car with his hand. "What are you doing?" Kinzu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After looking at the beautiful Zhu, he shrugged helplessly. "Now, it's time for this beautiful lady to tell you what we are here for. Fin est captulo much as great as Pelaga hasta el final. No esse indeed all like bus gasms contenido exclusivo ixo immediato. Suscribita news teropatrian. Recurda, carda like, suscripsino donakin nos anima a continue. Great as a todos nos vemos on elpsmovdo.